RedBlackInfinite by Alexander Key, alongside over 1 billion discarded lives, with each using the other to climb out. I crawl through the tunnel and see others behind me. I kick out the support beams and let the tunnel collapse so I cannot be followed. Quote, "In my mind's eye my thoughts light fires in your cities." Charles Manson. The ground has a very certain texture. I see it being trampled by bare feet in packs of 3s and 4s in unison. I see them clearly now. They're singing like army cadets during a training exercise. Organisms so similar to humans, but at the same time warped and inhuman-looking in their kaleidoscope appearance. I inadvertently smile at what's next in show. There's a haze intermittently obscuring their activities. Their singing is kept in check and never falters in volume or tone. Translucent beings encircle another that is not among their caste. I lean forward closer, expectantly. They are an insect people, like ants covered in sex organs. I record their language as I notice that the being that is not among them becomes slowly clearer to me. It is a tadpole-like creature that is cowering at their haunches. The insect people ready their weapons, improvised spears forged from meteorites, and in unison they raise their weapons to the sky as though asking of its power to be infused into them. The singing ends. Their spears swiftly plunge into the lower caste. The skewered being has a look of exquisite pain, but I cannot hear them. White trickles of blood flows from their wounds anticlimactically. The insect people retract their spears to catch their breath, and in doing so they seemingly spit at the spear tips in a way to cleanse them. They wait while their victim lies in pieces, but continues twitching, and soon after, each piece begins to move more fluently and independently, like a child learning to walk. I make note of what looks like a bizarre pregnancy. I am unsure if this ritual is a kind of fertility rite or abortion, where they dispose of the unwanted in order to be recreated. The newborns writhe and dig themselves into that mossy earth. Quote, "We see God through our assholes in the flashbulb of orgasm." William S. Burroughs. A conversation burned into me. What is beyond love and hate? Rape. And what is beyond that? Nothing. Quote, "Perverse writers whose corruption is so dangerous, so active, that their single aim is, by causing their appalling doctrines to be printed, to immortalize the sum of their crimes after their own lives are at an end. They themselves can do no more, but their accursed writings will instigate the commission of crimes, and they carry this sweet idea with them to their graves. It comforts them for the obligation, enjoined by death, to relinquish the doing of evil." Marquis de Sade, Justine, or the misfortunes of virtue. Dreams die. I realize something now. After having been beaten endlessly by the world and its many wonders, I now shed the belief I used to behold, where I pretended that I was wise, kind, and mature. That path failed. That way of thinking was born of repression, where I repressed my true ugly self. And I have instead embraced a faith in the impossibility in change when it's been proven over and over that the universe is cruel and indifferent to things such as faith. It's like being lost or confused and finding the thing that you were looking for in the very first place you overlooked. That early nihilism in youth. I now know that there is no hope. Every human, every living thing down to their subatomic level should be destroyed. I've even lost hope that in death there is rebirth, because there is a chance of the same mistakes being made over and over ad infinity. All that can be assured from my demise is that long-desired rest. What this means for friends, I don't know, but I would assure them that nothing is personal. I have recalled a vast and pure hatred, including a hatred of all life and even nature itself. I imagine if H.P. Lovecraft were alive today and envisioning a new elder god beyond nature. But then I realized that he'd focus merely on races instead. I look over this text written at my darkest moment, where I held a knife to my veins for many hours, and I no longer wish for the end, but I am comfortable with its eventuality. Art as a means of revenge against society. I walked home from the local bar, thoroughly exhausted and feeling especially hopeless. I wanted to get into a fight as a way to exorcise this anger. Down an alley I hear a struggle and try to avoid it out of sudden cowardice, fearing I could be the next victim. But it got to a point where I couldn't ignore the screaming and reasoned that if I were to die in a heroic manner, then all the better. I ventured down that alley and saw an obese drag queen lying on the ground face down in a blood puddle. I do not move them, and instead scan the area for their attacker, but can see or hear no one. The drag queen turns over, revealing deep wounds and ritualistic tattoos on their limbs. They gasp for breath in their dying moments. I reach for my phone, but the victim lying before me reaches up, pausing me for a moment, and says, "Thank you." I ask them, "Thank you for what?" And they said, "Thank you for freeing me." I still don't know what that means. Quote, "To me, death is not a fearful thing. It's living that's treacherous." The Reverend Jim Jones, streams of blood. There's a rising heat fogging up my lens. Heat from so much fresh blood, nude children dancing among it while looking up, unaware that they are looking up at me. I have to look away and clean the lenses every other minute or so, and then adjust the cameras to get a wider but less defined view. The children retreat into a cave. Before I could question that, I see the reason for their retreat, an approaching army on horseback. In their thousands, and armed with skeletal muskets, bedecked with what looks like an improvised armor built in a scrap yard. The horseback riders lead a gallant charge into a thick cloud tinged red by blood tide. They disappear into the ether. The blood tide rises ever so slightly each time they sally forth, and I need to clean the lenses again. One can assume it's a mass suicide. But for what? I look to the cave once more after another cleaning. The children emerge again. They gallantly dance in the blood, cupping handfuls and washing themselves before passionately drinking it. Alas, their rider failed in their suicide promise. He has fallen near the edge, just outside of the miasma. The children approach him and fiercely remove his armor. The disgraced rider mimes something to one of them. He appears to have sired the one who is now standing atop of him and holds his life in their hands. Whatever communication intended seems to have failed, and the children tear him apart, biting into his thighs, breaking backwards fingers and toes, gouging the eyes and violating them with what appear to be barbed green tongues. It is a prolonged murder, culminating in the smaller children excavating the torso and playing inside the now hollowed entrance, painting themselves in the blood of their conquest after it is finished. The sired child, now bathed head to toe in the blood of their parent, grabs another child by the hair and drags them into the cave alone. I look away and study other places. My cameras later showed newer and stronger beings emerge from the cave, still painted a dark red. Quote, "If we can't live in peace, then let's die in peace." The Reverend Jim Jones. No gods, no masters, no survivors. There is a city now, skyscrapers impossibly tall, stretching into the hundreds of miles into the orbit, making it the easiest place for me to discover. But the buildings are unlike what you would expect. They are hollow, split open almost, like a body dissected for an audience. I see people that look like us. There is a plain sereneness to it. It's all benign and gray. All the people look the same. They are nude and without race. I question the nudity and make note of it, but soon had to make amends when I saw my answer to a question that was stirring. What of their morality? Giant planes appear and hover in place above the city. The planes are several hundred times the size of the biggest Condor plane that I've yet known. I add a note that the Condor is the only plane in the world large enough to transport a mobile launcher ICBM that could launch a missile armed with nuclear material. The bellies of the planes open and giant boxy machines carefully descend on the city. They were not designed for sleek elegance, but for utility with their beige colors and square bodies, with vacuum hose-like appendages. It resembles an old B-movie with crude giant robots. The people in the skyscrapers welcome them, as they willingly let themselves be abducted by the vacuum hoses. As this goes on, a song is blared from the planes. You could feed the world with my garbage dump. You could feed the world with my garbage dump. You could feed the world with my garbage dump. That sums it up in one big lump. Charles Manson's Garbage Dump plays. The wailing echoes everywhere as he continues singing. The robots appear to have been filled to capacity with people. It is then that I notice the see-through design of their torso. It appears to be a kind of compactor. I hear no screams as over 100,000 people are crushed to death in an instant. Garbage dump. Oh, garbage dump. Why are you called a garbage dump? Garbage dump. Oh, garbage dump. That sums it up in one big lump. The sphere beckons me. There is an innate curiosity to keep looking in, to be an explorer, to be a voyeur, to be a hidden god. Delete this. Quote, a book is a postponed suicide. E.M. Sioran. Can they hear me? Noise experiments have inconclusive results. They seem indifferent to my speeches. Some continue whatever it is they were doing while my voice provided a mild at best interruption. I installed more cameras to capture the experience, and every time I would speak, the results would be the same, no matter what I said or how I said it. A polite hello has the same result as a scream in my most angered states, a rise in the suicides. Quote, normality is a paved road. It's comfortable to walk, but no flowers grow on it. Vincent van Gogh. I look into the well, searching for answers. Images flow. I can't tell what they're trying to tell me. The father figure, the psychologist, the guru, the fraud, asks what I see. I see 3 black boys side by side being hanged from a tree by Karl Panzram, who appears as a cheerful executioner that whistles along with bird henchmen in a bizarre Disney adaptation. The boys die after several minutes. A row of white children jogs over and grab the bodies and play with them like they were tires on a swing. The figure asks me why, and I remain silent as an answer. Pelican, bird, part of what? Like a parrot. What movie has a pelican in it? Day 2 of the implant. I've already uploaded almost 500 terabytes of space to a backup drive at home. It's filled with old movies, factoids, and history books. There's so much that it bleeds together, and I sometimes get confused. I see her, with her short and lean build, tan skin, but definitely a white girl. She has short black hair. She looks at me. I try not to even glimpse at her, or think of her in those intimate moments during the sex act. Too late. The implant is inserted through the eye socket like a lobotomy operation and computerizes the brain. It grants total control over our emotions, our nerve endings, our strength, bodily urges, and even offers telepathy with fellow cyborgs. There are built-in limits for moral and practical reasons. People often hack the implant. Malware is a problem, now used as a defense in murder trials. Others disable the pain. I saw a man die happily on his front lawn while never knowing he had cancer. Some crank up the effects, and the endorphin waves can lead to unique feelings, like drowning in an orgy. I am with the tan white woman. Her cunt continues to slowly bleed while her shirt and bra have been cut in half. She cries, but doesn't feel any pain as I hold her and cuddle. She asks me why, and I tell her how I read her mind and saw her rape fantasies. Quote, I hold the pink baby. I slice off those rosy cheeks because I am so thirsty. L'Autremont, Maldorer. The Murder of Junko Furuta is a story that draws inspiration from me. It is a tragic tale of immense suffering. It reiterates that death is not the worst thing that can happen to us. Being forced to live in pains, it brings to mind the mentally enfeebled born without a functioning brain, and constantly seizing trapped in a useless body, where their families refuse to let them die and end the agony of useless continuance. The endlessness of Junko's torture would inspire only sadness and pity among the normal people. But I, as an abnormal person, saw something better. I see a reincarnation of Jesus Christ. I see relief in that torment, and all manner of words from languages old and dead that describe pain. In my mind, she died for me. When I sleep, I see her final hours, and when I first awaken, I see that battered body floating upon heavenly laurels and lifted by Mohammedan beings. They whisper to her, one of us, gooble gobble. I see them, and therefore I know that she is saintly with my naivete validated. Her death will inspire others as it has for me. I'm not partaking in schadenfreude. I am the maker of new and better things. From this prison cell, I shall better myself and better others in the process. VR has come a long way. Film is a dying art and has been usurped by VR experiences. Essentially, they're interactive games with a narrative. Why watch an action or horror film when the viewer can participate and choose a different ending every time? In turn, this has created amazing erotic fantasy and serial killer simulators. I've gone over the case extensively and have recreated the murder of Junko Furuta in its entirety in VR. The user reviews have been encouraging. I have designed the experience so that once it starts, it cannot be ended. I want a child, and I want them to experience my creation. The experience has touched numerous lives in news reports live-streamed by independent vloggers. One claims a transgender showed a Let's Play in class. Another of a man who accidentally streamed himself while masturbating to it. The latest is a pedophile who claims he was so moved that he recorded his suicide. I want to build rockets to the sun, but can build only ladders. Radicalized sects broadcast mass chainsaw beheadings via Google Glass. Above a glory hole in a men's room is a quote from an unknown author. The future is in your hands. Jeffrey Dahmer was born in the wrong era. Had he been born a decade or two later, he would have access to sex androids and facsimiles of a 24/7 relationship through cam whores and fellow lonely people. Or perhaps this would only embolden him. It should be noted that Junko Furuta was a Japanese schoolgirl who was abducted by several boys who pretended to be members of the Yakuza. The girl was trapped in a small room and raped and tortured endlessly for over 20 days until she was eventually beaten to death. Notes from a scientist who committed suicide. I am unable to move forwards with Project Redacted due to huge concerns of impropriety. This technology was initially designed to sustain ideas from great men, but I see now in my professional opinion, that it is being used as a kind of faux immortality for the wealthy and influencers. Only those without shame or fear can stand the idea of being immortal, when the process of immortality will involve other people seeing your thoughts without your control. I did not commit my energy into preserving bad ideas. Quote, imagine a boot stomping on the human face forever. George Orwell, 1984. The rich will commit suicide to preserve their thoughts in an all-digital age where the brain can be downloaded and accessed. This will be the revelation before 1,000,000 eyes, public shame. However, those that can endure that shame will be among a chosen few, without scruples or boundaries, the privileged and insane. Quote, the Creator opened his door in the darkness and let a pederast in. L'autre amant, mal doror. I see them flirt, lovelorn messages, with quotes from music and movies. The recipient cannot love them like I do. Theirs is artifice. I cannot allow this to be. For security purposes, I needed to have a new identity. I was involved in many things up to and including orchestrating coups d'etats with local militia groups. Now I'm part of Operation Santa Claus. My time is preoccupied with monitoring the public, skimming emails, social media, webcams, smartphone geo-tracking, and the like. It's a boring and yet powerful position. In my free time, I've been using this to keep tabs on my ex. You'd be surprised at the lack of checks and balances in such a system. They've texted each other again. They're within a mile. I listen in on their conversation. I will always love you, they say to one another. I roll my eyes and see to it that their bank accounts are frozen by this evening. Pictures of their most intimate moments mysteriously leak onto the internet. I deep fake my ex's face onto acts of bestiality and alert their employers of past racial digressions made either in public or private. The artificial lover has their details left on most wanted notices, and by the morning both of them will be on no-fly lists. They coo at one another, unaware of being watched and their imminent downfall. I whisper to myself, no one will ever love you like I will. Quote, there is a secret that kills me, which I hide from curious eyes. You will see here only the statue. The soul is hidden from every gaze. Pierre-François Lacenaire. Notes continued. It reminds me of a story my father would tell me. He'd laugh a little as he told it. My father was a very to-the-point man, but he always had a big kid kind of attitude at the same time. He was already Special Forces by that point, and was a young recruit for the CIA, being shown the ropes and all that. He was a good soldier, and often skirted death by the skin of his teeth. He was invited by superiors to watch as a teenage boy was brought in for questioning. The boy wouldn't relent, and the superiors shot him in the kneecap. My father watched and said nothing. Soon after, through much screaming and tears, the boy gave them the information that they requested. He was solemn for a moment, and would immediately return to his jovial nature, recounting his adventures in being a spy. What happened to the boy thereafter is unknown. I want good stories to tell. Metaphor for an invisible war? The grime has settled, and I take the time to remove it before continuing. Before big proclamations comes nascent cleanliness clashing with the filth around me. Dying insects and scurrying of rats in the walls. Electricity and internet without running water, such contradictions, like the sewers beneath cities, vital and foul, yet home to treasures such as lost jewelry and discarded lovers. I don't want to be forgotten. I keep repeating this, but cannot think of more to add. My mind wanders, thinking of those that were remembered for uneventful things or beyond their control. I neglect fortuity in such matters, importance, strife, pointlessness, C'est la vie. From the woman whose tumors had survived her passing and her suffering, had benefited humanity, to the drug addict, accidentally murdered and became a symbol for a movement beholden to the insane and corporations. If Jesus died with Nike shoes and Coca-Cola branding on a chrome cross, rat squeaks and clawing at the walls breaks my concentration. I mutter out loud, if Muhammad fell into vats of molten lead. My thoughts are again interrupted by incestual rat orgies and cannibalism. After all I've created, I look down upon it and cringe. I'd rather die being an unknown than a known failure. I am not insane. The sick man screams out how the government knows all of our sexual peccadillos and spends all his money because he no longer believes in a tomorrow. Leave my hate unbroken. My thoughts need to be spoken, to be preserved. I yearn for branding irons of the alphabet and unwilling participants. I see an immense wheat field whose color is changed by an approaching nightfall. From my post of observation, it appears that the field is at first being warped by underground shifting like a silent earthquake. There's a strong wind coming. The air becomes richer with the smell of weeds. Now there are reverberations from within the ground and reaching towards the sky. I can see the shock waves rising. I succumb to it and pretend it's a cool bath. My eyes are closed, but the light show can still be seen through the thin flesh strips. A bright wave slowly grows ever brighter. I smile as it approaches closer. I can hear trees in the distance loudly crack and fall. Sirens ring in the far distances. I open my hands and welcome it. The howl of dying creatures is muted by this great wave. I feel an intense heat encroaching, and I know that the pain is but momentary and will be gone just as quickly as it will arrive. The great nuclear blast finally joins me. There's nothing left in its wake but scorched grass and the shadows of life etched into earth. There's a cooked smell mixed with a chemical odor that makes me immediately vomit. My everything is taken, and I smile through the pain. My intestines fall away at once, and in that juice I see, kill me, torture me, rape me, love me, hate me. I see the authority figure, but I dare not strike, not yet. I feel like I'm waiting for the right moment. Unfortunately, my sanity halts my impulses, or at least calms them for a later time. I should be more reckless. I should have been a serial killer. Just to become what they expect of me, especially with how they treat me. I'll be their monster. Burn this. This is a work you bury. You create terrible things to ward off evil. A line told to me by a friend. This is a lie, and in the cold indifference that I welcome each strike through by the pen, overseen by approving automatons of my invention. My ego strokes me on that I am creating a grand work. I am the architect of a temple only I can use. This creation is my bonsai tree that I prune over years of self-work, a planting of dangerous ideas. To others it is a monument of trash, refuse packaged in cheap bright papers and golden ribbons. Obvious philosophy. The body is a temple, but such constructions can collapse, are buried, and are forgotten. And what is the temple, then, but a relic to a dead god by future civilizations? I reject this. I am not a temple. I choose to be a weapon. I step into the fires, and I am taken. Wote. I am man abandoned. Georges Bataille. I step out of the cave and see a mummified body, as though it was presented to me like a gift awaiting my return. I undo the bandages and remove the delicate skull. There's an air of dust rising with each detachment of this gift. I hold the skull and break it open. Within are two smaller children's skulls. I know this from the presence of baby teeth embedded in the upper jaws. The sagging breasts, frozen in death's grace, are revealed to me. I touch them and I see myself falling into the void. Quote, You who look at me now, go away. The breath I exude is poison. L'autre amant, Maldoror. A computerized brain offers infinite possibilities for sex. One can hack the implant to fool someone into thinking that they're fucking their lover. This leads to more false rape reports. There are also cheaper options, such as merely applying a cosmetic hack that covers our imperfections, similar to AI that beautifies faces in video. Such hacks are codenamed Vaseline, in homage to older pornography, where Vaseline would cover the lens to obscure the ugliness of the performers. It culminates in VR simulations, where the dead are brought back for the sake of grieving loved ones. Parents can say their goodbyes to dead children and embrace the lie. They ignore the fact that the process of recreating the dead involves creating a model and multitudes of voice lines. These are repurposed for later applications, ranging from porn to murder simulators. Little do they realize that by wanting to embrace the lie, that they immortalize the dead for the enjoyment of others. Believe in the lie and you will be happy. Quote, "We lose our life with joy." L'autre. Snuff films get nominations at the Oscars. Quote, "Real misanthropes are not found in solitude, but in the world, since it is experience of life and not philosophy which produces real hatred of mankind." Giacomo Leopardi. You seek my experiences. My words are left to be twisted and reinterpreted. My wounds are reopened, and my pain is now yours. The written word grows in power, represented in PIG, drawn in blood on the walls of murder scenes. I have written all this down and placed it inside the breast pocket of a corpse in a field. Quote, "Most faggy goddamned thing you could ever imagine." Richard Nixon on the Bohemian Grove. There's different kinds of inspiration. One can see the divine in sewage or in Mount Everest. There's sudden warmth around me. It's become uncomfortable in the office. The machinery's power supply kicks into overdrive as the heat rises. I run a quick diagnostic and reroute the power to cool this place down. I quickly wipe away the sweat around my neck as I do this arduous process, walking from machine to machine and manually adjusting the power routes. Done. A cool air falls over me. I begin to catalog my findings in a rare moment of calm. Question: why is there so much pain? Answer: it's more interesting. Niceness and love are a boring narrative, a narrative I disagree with on a personal level. Off the record, I believe that destruction is creation, so what we see are not endings but new beginnings. Question: are all places dying? Answer: not all. It appears that the places that are in harmony are the most difficult to find. Question: Jesus metaphors? Answer: more like Rabia of Basra metaphors. I've seen over 1,000 times now the beginnings and ends of a dead god. Question: should we interfere? Should we stop the ongoing massacres? Answer: no, for it is part of nature. Every day I look up at the sun and thank it for delivering to us the Black Death, Stalin, Hitler, Mao, and King Leopold. I think of it as accelerated Greenpeace procedures to wipe out the billions in an effort to preserve the planet. Genocide is as natural as cancer. I capitalize cancer because I respect it. I set aside the microscope and my many notes captured by the many cameras, succumbing to fatigue, and rub my eyes in a state of exhaustion. Exploring other worlds on a globe-like device, seeing so many new worlds and great and primitive civilizations is my new occupation. I extend my arm to the globe and allow the bacterial life forms to overwhelm and devour me in a mockery of Michelangelo's The Creation of Adam. I thought I could endure. From the darkness is a slender being arising from the black ether, holding a severed head and placing it atop theirs like a king reclaiming their crown. I partake in fantasies I would never do, hammering a prostitute's breasts into a desk with rusty nails, and her screams fill me with a proclamation. They are my art and my entertainment. Their bodies are tools, my means to achieve. My typing finishes as the industrial engine cools and I look upon my confession. Among these rejected items are the historical records that chronicle the creation of a mediocre soul. Quote, "What one does not know, one must therefore remain silent." Wittgenstein, Tractatus Logico-Philosophicus. Faces pulled apart. A rollicking crowd on the back of a lizard death machine fucking its spines. Progress and what no longer scares us being swept aside. Bodies attempting to leap from statues bursting with fire. A failed technology where each life form attempts to grab at what they think is a golden ring leading out to their escape is just a hologram. Quote, "If I commit suicide, it will not be to destroy myself, but to put myself back together again. Suicide will be for me only one means of violently reconquering myself, of brutally invading my being, of anticipating the unpredictable approaches of God. By suicide, I reintroduce my design in nature. I shall for the first time give things the shape of my will." Antonin Artaud. I select the white chocolate flavor. My partner grins with a dirty smile as I approach their lap and bend down with my left cheek, exposed to them awaiting a tender caress. My hair is petted and they take a bite from my cheek. It feels so good. They lap up my blood and pick my head up to their lips for a gory kiss. I embrace it and allow my face to be slowly bitten away. I come uncontrollably, and my partner demands more flavors. I feel no pain as I access my implant and select new flavors to be infused in my flesh. White chocolate, mixed with vanilla and red wine. My diner approves and sucks out my eyeballs. I am cut open while still alive. My partner uses kitchen utensils to taste me further. With my open mouth, they orgasm and let me taste their improved juices that taste like the most refined vodka. Quote, "Who, if I cried out, would hear me among the hierarchies of angels? And if one did take me to his heart, I would perish from his stronger existence. For beauty is nothing but the onset of terror we're still just able to bear, and we admire it so because it calmly disdains to destroy us. Every angel is terrifying. Riek Duino elegies another beauty, another just like the other, but the manner of demise is most spectacular. At least that's what my clients tell me. In my unique position, I share the many kinds of bodies with select clientele. In fact, I'm often the second to arrive after the EMT workers, and I take photos of the recent dead in order to best find them a place. Clients see the various races and types of demise, be it suicide, rape, murder, or car crash, and etc., and select these bodies as the best kind of manure for the most befitting crops. That which best suits corn is the suicided teenager, rape, murder victims for roses, and the homeless died from exposure or drug addiction are an exception and make the best kind of bone meal for the hogs. The last. I approach the ruined city. White noise fills the air and there is a stench of motor oil. I see two lumberjacks using a giant saw, one at each end, decapitating 3 people at once. The victims have a look embracing death as the heads fall in an open pit in the broken road. There is a statue atop a building of an ancient man in an electric chair, looking down and judging the populace in his final moments. Lightning often strikes the statue. All the children that I pass have deformed faces set in a smile. There's a man with his arms outstretched to the sky, violently shaking. His flesh molts away in the intense heat and resembles the transformation of a caterpillar to a butterfly replete with the emblems of human skulls on the wings in the colors of dried blood and yellowed fat. A giant web hangs between two buildings. The web looks homemade, and in the center, instead of a spider, is an impaled body with wires run to it, providing an ongoing supply of blood to keep the unknown victim alive. There is an observer on a throne of garbage who thinks out loud. I dare not talk to them, but they proclaim how this is all a conquering over logic, and how beautiful it is. In the backgrounds of the buildings is a repeating graffiti. Foucault is a faggot. I can't tell if it is day or night, but the moon seems to disintegrate, and I follow signs to a series of cages, leading to a revamped zoo. I see another watcher slice into their arms and pull back the skin. A black viscous pours, and they have no emotion on their face, and I can't tell if it is their suicide or if it is an attempt at rebuilding oneself. At the zoo, I see a glass exhibit of a ruined female. Her face looks stitched together and her hair brims with insect life. Above this exhibit reads a plaque. Here lies Rabia. The participants on the bleachers above throw broken bottles and urinate into the exhibit. One masturbates to Rabia's suffering, and their falling jism acts like an acid to her flesh. I greet my audience once my project has completed, and I commit public suicide, as if to give my creation my life force. Two people fill a white room, older man, younger woman. She is tired and strikes a Balthus-inspired pose. She goes on about experiences, how we share experiences, and that reaction from others adds to our experience with feelings of interconnectedness, of shared feelings, exuberance, fulfillment, and therefore find a deeper appreciation of what we love. She goes on and on about leaving something half-finished as a statement. The man sips on a bottle of Coca-Cola and says to her, "You know what? I hear you say all these things, and I keep wondering, what would it look like if I cut off your pussy lips? To destroy and rebuild until there is illusion of perfection." Quote, "Language bearers, photographers, diary makers, you with your memory are dead, frozen, lost in a present that never stops passing. Here lies the incantation of matter, a language forever. Begotten, a tomb opens. I look inside and fall. I'm skewered onto broken machinery. There are many ancient bodies alongside me, but I live for how long I can't remember. More people fall, falling onto already skewered meat, and manage to land gracefully in near bloodless death. The light opens a door in shadow that I never noticed before, and the light takes them while leaving my body behind. See the light filtering between them? A robot messiah warns fellow explorers, ignoring my dying sighs. He announces that he is the survivor of a great genocide, and he oversees the gate to heaven. Quote, "If I wasn't a musician, I would be a serial killer." Judge Allen. Vehicles race off down a tunnel, bodies strapped to the front, veering off into the distant stars. The drivers want to visit God, but their cabins depressurize suddenly, and they die before their arrival. Quote, "Remember you have no companions but your shadow, Genghis Khan. Morality, love, leads to suffering such as a child born without a brain, and kept alive out of love." I read this in the notes of a serial killer and look past it, dismissing it as my screen fills with new imagery and the voices of friends and loved ones. I will not remember this quotation until just before my death. Quote, "I am the great traitor. There must be no other. Anyone who even thinks about deserting this mission will be cut up into 198 pieces. Those pieces will be stamped on until what is left can be used only to paint walls. Whoever takes 1 grain of corn or 1 drop of water, more than his ration, will be locked up for 155 years. If I, Aguirre, want the birds to drop dead from the trees, Then the birds will drop dead from the trees. I am the wrath of God. The earth I pass will see me and tremble. But whoever follows me and the river will win untold riches. But whoever deserts, Agire, the wrath of God. The air is putrid. The planet is on fire. I look down at them, and am neither pawn nor judge, but observer. I see herds of man fleeing in desperation. The masses of people huddle by cliffsides. Thunder and repeated noise of the sound barrier being broken overwhelm and overtake. Tiny bubbles, resembling air pockets underwater, float amongst the sky. Above all, the noise and prayer, in last-second redemption, are the noise of whale calls, implying that whales are worth saving, but not man. Just as a woman is about to sing to comfort them, the end happens in an instant. Quote, "When I am alone, I always feel like I am in a perfect state." Henry Rollins. I come across the great AI God. It shows me the evolution of influence. Example: Japanese cannibal influences the Rolling Stones song, "Too Much Blood." A couple listens to the song as they conceive their son. The son grows up to be a policeman and is forced to shoot a black teenager who held an infant as a hostage and threatened to cut their throat with a steak knife. I see a rolling ball collecting all beneath it, either a great boulder or a turd clasped by a dung beetle. We will rewrite "The kingdom of God is within you." There are images of John Bennett Ramsey on gigantic monitors. She glistens white and wears a veil to cover her fake smile. She resembles a Muslim vampire. Before that is a man on his pulpit warning us of the future. Outside, his lackeys hammer skulls into the ground with massive railroad spikes to form a fence. There's a sign warning intruders, "Is there life after death? Trespass here and find out." Those useless appendages amputated by eugenic miracle. There will be no privacy. Everyone will be videotaped, including our sex acts, and therefore no one will feel shame, as all of our fetishes are no longer hidden. There will be a new world of casual disgust, tolerated and forgotten about. You will only be remembered as a victim. Victims of horrible torments will be given passes, a literal sympathy pass, that allows them to commit an unspeakable act without repercussion. A Holocaust victim who lost his unborn daughter is free to eviscerate a family and rape an underage girl. There have been cases where people have incited their families to be tortured to death in order to fulfill their repressed desires. The sage tries to appear wise but only quotes porn dialogue. A captured woman, her savior, inserts a wheel-like device into her mouth and informs her that her body will be the tool used to write a new Bible. The device expands her mouth, breaking her jaw, but at the same time cauterizing the wounds. Her death was prolonged as her mouth became a new gateway. When man lives to be 1,000,000 years old is when the world truly ends. Take my heart upon your hand. Free me. In the bright morning hours, you are the one to take me away in roughshod operation, where we both get what we want, my non-existence. I have no words as you cut out my chest and endure this unmaking. The obese woman lectures me. I stab into her tumorous breasts, quickly severing them. There are benefits to misfortune and tragedy, such as being too ugly to rape. Then you deviseth, make do, improvise, and survive. Do you want to see the end of the world? It already happened. Just look out your window. Conversation between friends on what they see in the future. One sees a peaceful plain, little girls frolicking among the wheat fields and honeysuckles. The other sees an immense fountain of blood, figures charred to black and turned on a spit, and a giant head with ornamental masks at each side, consuming newborns. The friend seeing endless violence makes a point that in Viking times they carried the severed heads of their conquests into taverns to boast. The optimistic friend refuses to judge the other and condemn his thought, but remains puzzled by their implications. It's hard to be nihilistic when you believe that what you're creating has value. And what if what you create is a weapon? Quote, "The worldly kingdom suffers violence, and the violence is triggered by force." The Reverend Jim Jones. In the future, there are no more stories to tell, just raw and visceral feelings brought to the show. I argue that it's like how porn evolved from stag loops to having a story and back again. Quote, "You don't know what bleeding is." Forced entry, 1973. A woman murders her family and pets to prevent them from seeing a horrible world. She ponders how her child suckled at the sour paps of her breast in her family's dying moments, where she blesses them with gasoline and welcomes the fires. Quote, "We fascists are the greatest anarchists." Salo, The 120 Days of Sodom. I shorted stocks on September 11th. I had an insider tip and shorted my stocks for American and United Airlines. I made a nice sum and am able to retire early. I confessed this to a waiter whose grasp of the English language was questionable. They asked what stock shorting was, and I said nothing while continuing to down my drink. People look at their phones around me, while I refuse to answer my satellite phone and pretend to watch the monitor playing the news. I make note of the crawl at the bottom of the screen, mentioning the war between Yemen and Saudi Arabia. The reporters on the screen celebrate the birthday of Batman. Quote, "Give them bread and circuses and they will never revolt." Juvenal. There is a cadaver floating in a sea of blackness, its face frozen in an expression of shock and horror, a permanent capture of the moment where they became self-aware of living inside the machine and the unending nature of rebirth and reuse. They allowed themselves to die in the hope that they would dissolve and create nothing in the void. To their regret, their atoms split away like seedlings, and soon that nothing becomes another planet and host for evermore rebirth and destruction. You cannot fill an empty and meaningless life with more meaningless life. On repeat, every day is the same treatise on insanity repeated for thousands of years. There are still things left to be discovered and left to be changed. I am a time traveler, warning you, I am burned at the stake for witchcraft. Once the problem of physical aging has been resolved, the next problem to be tackled is the resonant sound of the aging human voice. It would be unnatural for a person to look 28 but sound 88. Would you go see a live performance of your favorite band when they're pushing 80 and sound so very tired? Through a simple procedure, whereby an insertion of a sort of speaker system in the throat is performed, an AI will reproduce the voice of the individual into sounding younger or whatever they prefer. This technology has left voice actors in Hollywood without work, while the affluent octogenarian can do a dead-on Bugs Bunny voice as if possessed by Mel Blanc to entertain their young and, by proxy, promote the benefits of such miracles of science. Transsexuals no longer have to put on a fake effeminate or lower voice to pass. More so, the individual can sound however they want, altering their voice at will. Research shows that the politician can assume the perfect wavelength of trust, and even further on, select words will be heard by their base and enemies. We don't even need a vocal implant to achieve this for propaganda purposes. Furthermore, women can alter orgasmic moans to the most elegiac pitch, whereas rapists can transform howls of rage to swoon their victims. Consequentially, the undesirables are easily muted by the implant, or the individual can selectively mute their voice at their own behest. I feel like a werewolf in the midst of transformation, locked in a cage. In this, deconstruction changes us in the process to be a revolutionary society. Seeing a perfect family and destroying it, in this, rebuild, finding contentment in change. Destruction can be an act of creation. In this, realization, it is that sacrifice, losing that thing I once cherished where I see. You propose death? I propose rebirth. Quote, all men are created equal is an infernal lie. Might is right, or the survival of the fittest, Ragnar Redbeard. I murder his lover. I relish his tears when I take my time decapitating the corpse. I hollow out the neck and insert a blowtorch through the mouth. I then spark it to life and have it mock fellatio in necrophilia torture. The lover screams and it pleases me. Quote, fuck the world, Bjork Stalker, a crowd roaring to find comfort in this confused world, and are fooled into thinking that they've found truth. But it's like finding warmth in the arms of a prostitute. Better for gravity to no longer exist so that they may fall into the sun. They become a sea of people cooked to ashes to forge a weapon. By whom and for what purpose I do not yet know, but keep watching and waiting. Quote, but there is no real me, only an entity, something illusory, and though I can hide my cold gaze and you can shake my hand and feel flesh gripping yours, and maybe you can even sense our lifestyles are probably comparable, I simply am not there. Bret Easton Ellis, American Psycho. I climb the summit and discover it is a giant ogre stabbed into its back with knives. The beast sits comatose while travelers walk on the knives and risk being cut to pieces. Others freeze in place and refuse to go on further. Their only goal is to see the face of God. The giant roars, shifting in his place, and the travelers fall. Quote, every man is an abyss. You get dizzy looking in. Georg Buchner, Wojciech. Piles of screaming people replace a coal as a fuel being shoveled into the exhausted furnace engine of a train, roaring towards an approaching cataclysm, a sacred sacrifice, creating a tool in spite of a universe that will not remember you, an act of creation to remind yourself that you exist, and sometimes you need to be loud to wake people up, like good music. Like a bomb in a crowd. There in the corner is a hole leading to a damp pit. I don't want to go down there, but I know I have to. The pain is building up too much for it to be ignored any longer. I have to shit, and I know I'm being watched. My every action is being overanalyzed, and I know that they want to see me shit, and I know that they laugh at me. I'm trapped here, half-starved, and in total isolation. You'd think I'm a paranoid schizophrenic, but how then did I get here? I can't remember. All I remember is who I was before waking up here. I know nothing of whom or what brought me here and for what purpose. I might be someone's pet now. I have some food, and there's a constant light shining in from man-made holes. But the only noise I hear, or I think I hear, is the sound of camera motors. I can't contain it anymore. I reluctantly head down the hole to the damp pit. I dig out several handfuls of soil for which I will squat into. It's so humiliating, and I'm forced to bury it with my hands or be overwhelmed with the stench throughout this place. I look up from the pit and notice it's become brighter now. Could it be a malfunction? A signal? Are my eyes deteriorating? The light becomes brighter until it reaches a sudden peak, extinguishing itself and leaving me with nothing. A cockroach wanders over to my fresh excreta. A recorded voice says in an echo, "Behold, misanthrope, this is what you deserve for your hatred of man." The recording plays endlessly. I dig a new hole far from my waist, laying down and letting the dirt fall over me, covering my ears. streamed live for 1,518 viewers, with the top donor selecting which new torture befalls the nameless. Dostoevsky was weak. Quote, "In an age that is utterly corrupt, the best policy is to do as others do." Marquis de Sade. In a sterile room, I am surrounded by every single human being I have ever encountered up until this very moment, and they are as I last remembered them. I have heard this is referred to as Dunbar's number. They stand still, motionless, but can still feel and see and hear. First to the appropriations, the ones who I respect and or love, and they are few. I shield their eyes with hoods and cover their ears with earmuffs. To the others who I am merely indifferent towards, they are left to watch. To those that I hate, and there are many, I bring out the tools. Those who mocked me, they're stabbed in the throat and left to bleed to death. Those who hurt me, variations of excruciating pain, crushed to death, burned alive, shot in the genitals, stabbed endlessly in the non-vital areas, gutted, teeth ripped out, eyeballs scooped, a feast for vermin, bones broken, tortured with frozen gas from aerosol containers, cut to pieces, slowly via chainsaw, and other methods drawn from an infinite imagination for the possibilities of pain. If I could bioengineer a newfound cancer that would forever feed from a living victim, it would be done on those that hurt me the most. Those who ruined me, tortured even more slowly over the course of weeks. They are slowly skinned alive or left to starve to death in the darkness. The very worst among them I keep alive to this very moment and beyond, limbless, on the verge of starvation while being fed intravenously, and with their eyes and mouth sewn to a close as if they could beg. I know that the perception my audience once held for me is forever changed, and I will have to live with that. I offer no apologies for my actions and say no excuses. I did what I did because I could, and had the ability to do so without fear of reprisal. Would you not do the same if you could easily eliminate everyone that abused you? And the beauty of it is that the subject believes that they're God, one onlooker saying to another watching with a stone-faced grimace, quote, "I ask you to judge me by the enemies I have made." Franklin D. Roosevelt. The parasite. I name it that because it's the only thing that allows me to separate myself in good company from my thoughts and my actions. It glows with might is right allegory in showing me. Beneath a crystal chandelier is Jeffrey Epstein receiving a "my first eugenicist kit" for an early Hanukkah. A kiss over one eye. We see droplets, incandescent and white, falling from nothingness. A floor made from flesh on bone. Above it lays a weeping figure. A woman built from intestinal tubing that cannot die. These drops rise from the ground, spontaneously grow, and soon die. The ground is a biomechanic manure pile. Breasts squeezed. Two such life forms manage to survive and prowl this place. They approach the woman, seeing her in obvious pain, and ignore her by continuing their explorations. They want to reach the sky. They sabotage other abortions that are reflections of themselves, using them as building blocks for their escape. A tumor germinates that reaches the size of Mount Everest. Tongues fuse together and lick crooked teeth. They reach atop that tumor, and the one who reaches the very top and keeps going runs out of oxygen, dying at the top of the mound. The survivor abandons their quest and settles in the failed birthing pit in wait. The woman soon dies, and this life form inherits her pain, and ending up resembling a human squid abomination, and tasting the bleeding jowls. The squid performs experiments upon those life forms, taking 1 billion years to create life. a pair of Siamese twins of each gender that they so name Adam and Eve. The nothingness begins to clear. My lover caresses me. A blue sky, we see clouds. Adam and Eve search the wasteland. The squid allows itself to rust away, offering sweet soothing. We see a sun where an ocean soon opens, brimming with blood and metal. Adam and Eve drink from it, going sterile in the process. Eve menstruates a blackish fluid upon her demise. Adam drags the body with his through the waters. Growing more tired and more human, he uses a piece of rock to amputate Eve from his, losing an arm in this surgery. And I have never known loneliness. Adam begins to speak, seeing other creatures emerge from the waters, and seeing that they are far more evolved beings than him in their beauty. In a fury, he kills one new life form and cannibalizes it. The body of man is a poison, and Adam succumbs to it and takes 50,000 years to expire while in agonizing pain. His body rots away and is forgotten. Quote, "Birds born in a cage think flying is an illness." Alejandro Jodorowsky. A blade gleams from within shadow. The slightest corner of a smile appears behind the face mask of the surgeon. The light bulbs dim for a momentary power surge. The blade gracefully falls onto my scaly flesh, cutting along a path painted by charcoal. Monitors beep and boop without rhyme, while an anesthesiologist holds a breathing mask over my struggling cherub face and holding down my T-Rex arms, preventing any kind of escape. The surgeon makes a gesture, and a medieval kind of rib separator is brought in, where I am opened up in a whip flash. The surgeon walks away feeling accomplished at his task, letting the aides finish what he started by pillaging my body. Surgical gloves of every color dive into my being, eventually finding my heart and severing it free. My former being is sent to a medical landfill, while my heart glows in a jar in storage along endless rows of preserved organs and stillbirth abortions. These are the rations for the rocket ship for the remaining humans colonizing Mars. That old hard data of the undesirables, such as myself, shall be recycled into rocket fuel for their arcs. Quote, "Our society tends to regard as a sickness any mode of thought or behavior that is inconvenient for the system, and this is plausible because when an individual doesn't fit into the system, it causes pain to the individual as well as problems for the system. Thus, the manipulation of an individual to adjust him to the system is seen as a cure for a sickness, and therefore as good." Ted Kaczynski. A solar flare has hit the Earth. Technology ceases to be. This is a recounting of all that happened. Without money and without distractions, it all reverted back to the Stone Age. Hierarchy and law crumbled. The repressed urges came forth and formed a perfect hatred. The father rapes his princess daughter, while the son murders the abusive mother. Bosses of all divisions and companies fled but could not run for long. Their lynchings lined up the telephone lines all the way down to Mexico and beyond. Prisoners escaped and inherited the earth temporarily, as cannibalism can only go so far. The prisoners could not farm. The farmers, which were religious, thrived, creating new gods and new errors in the generations that followed. Until science penetrated the madness again, the remnants of the old society made their move with new countries and new border disputes, manifest destiny. The first new nukes weren't stable and split the Earth's core. I write this, and me and family's history, knowing that nothing will remain. If reincarnation exists, then I wish to come back, as a comet that hits a planet before life can exist. The little cat walks along a quiet rooftop. People in the crowd begin to uneasily stir. The video continues playing silently, and aside from my voice, you could hear a pin drop. An Asian woman in a bondage outfit picks up the tiny animal and caresses it. I continue my love letter poetry. Holding you fulfills me like never before. The woman gently places the cat on the ground. Before you, I knew nothing of the greatest joys one could partake. The woman wears spiked heels. You exposed me to a new world. Yours. The woman smiles as she steps on the animal's torso with her heel. Your everlasting love. She twists the heel. That I offer to you. Blood seeps out, and the animal screams in terrible pain. Ever thine. She crushes the skull and slowly grinds it up. You are my everything. An abyss dreaming. My flesh fades from my eyes, and I no longer see my body. I have become fused to this terrible place of rest. All I ever wanted was a moment of happiness, and I fell into this trap. The allure of escape like sirens amid an endless ocean. I have no arms, for they fell away like driftwood. My legs melded to one and now serve as a tongue. My torso was compressed and is now a larynx. My cock has been ground to cartilage and has become part of this creature's ears. My skull is now an obscene growth, just barely emerging beneath its face. I am the living bacteria beneath you. The silence after a child cries for the final time. Machine noise winds up. There's a perfume from spent gun barrels. The end is coming, and I love it. I'm on a breaking wheel being rebuilt by scientists. I am a mistake. A massive hammer obliterates my left arm. I have lived and stole when needed to. I have tried to reciprocate. Another hammer obliterates my left leg. I am an abortion. I have had those dark and sacred thoughts. I was a waste of paper for the birth certificate. Another hammer obliterates my right arm. I am secretly cruel. I am unloved. I have sought vengeance. My right leg is obliterated. I am weak and poor, and I would kill you all if given the choice. A hammer obliterates my brain. I want the best view to see the end of the world. Quote, we're here at you interrupting me again, you fucking idiot. Then we're here at the same point again, where you, the fucking peon masses, can once again ruin anyone who tries to do anything because you don't know how to do it on your own. That's where we're fucking at. Once again, the useless waste of fucking flesh that has ruined anything good in this goddamn world. That's where we're at. I see the smiles and false promises. I see their end for every imaginable beginning. I do not curse or feel a sense of pity. They're already dead. I was never alive in the first place, just an empty vessel mimicking the last bits of life that looked into its reflection. A consciousness buried in uselessness, a permanent cripple, and bound by not a desire of vengeance but accepting falling into place, your true place. Quote, Hitler had the right idea, he was just an underachiever. Kill 'em all, Adolf, all of 'em, Jew, Mexican, American, white. Kill 'em all. Start over. The experiment didn't work. To pursue the dream and believe in lies, such as love, is denying your place. But accepting it is just like a battery connected to an engine that burns away the fog. Quote, rain 40 days. Please fucking wash these turds off my fucking life. Wash these human wastes of flesh and bones off this planet. I pray to you, God, to kill these fucking people. I light the fuse. The 2 oil and manure bomb are set in motion. I could run, but choose not to. I will await the rest in delighted oblivion. These are my last thoughts. Quote, Welp, I don't think this is going to be a get-laid set for me, but I'm not leaving, fuckers. As I said, you will be the first to leave. Bill Hicks. The cities glow red. The ashes ebb long past, cooled, transformed into a furnace utilizing a new fuel. Go green, nuke cities. A tranquil day. A rare sight. I take it in with a glad heart. There is no noise, not even animals. There's just a light wind through the remaining trees. I smile like a prospector surveying virgin land. I think out loud and point, a palace there, a holding cell over there. I will have what I never could. I have earned it. I cleaned out all the bodies and harvested the vital parts. I am a survivor and have helped others by providing them food and shelter. My time of abuse has now ended, and it's their turn. The survivors will serve me best in restarting humanity by repopulating it. It will be as if Noah stepped off his ark. The extermination of humanity under Keynesian economics destroyed gun barrels impaling newborns, the cries of toddlers seeing their mothers raped and their tablets smashed, crooked teeth gnawing the bones of the ancient dead. These cannibals crack open the delicate skulls in search of more knowledge. Thick fingers digging into knife wounds and pulling them open. Songs and screams mix, occasionally drowned out by mortar rounds and the sounds of more flying machines. Old men die in vain, protecting their cursed offspring. Boys castrated by dull pocket knives. Entire families trapped in their vehicles as tanks quickly drive over them. Even harmless pets disposed of via flamethrower. What remains are scooped up by roving recyclers. Secret witnesses eventually found and executed, with some fed to the machines while still alive. Behind them, the recyclers leave a watery fuel residue in their trails, petals of a rose like an exposed heart in the sun. I am in a cave. I am in retreat, away from people and away from noise. The cool air and echo envelopes me like a lost loved one or newfound lover. Back in the womb, as beheld by the sacred mother, I pray to her through my altar of stone and animal carcasses, where a single piss of light breaks. Upon that altar I say my prayer, that the earth will die, and my goddess will emit a solar flare. I welcome this. The rats and roaches are my feast, and once they go, I have no more need for living things, for I accept all what the sun brings. I'm already in a grave, and you cannot die again. Quote, "Only the perverse fantasy can save us," Goethe said to Eckermann. Rows of severed heads line paved roads. Shiny metal buildings mirror the spectacle. Figures dressed like Mary Poppins bounce atop from head to head, glided via umbrella. The heads putrefy and sprout a metal plant life from the empty eye holes. That plant life emits radio signals, music warped and played backwards, number stations accompanied by little old ladies laughing and crying. There's a constant hum of machine noise. People walk along as though they were marionettes, while the sun is a smiling caricature of Mao Zedong. Water rains precisely every 2 minutes for exactly 60 seconds. The air has the smell of new plastic. Women are openly raped, attacked with blades to the face. Beehive-haired woman has 2 blades through her eyes and 1 through her mouth. Arranged like abstract art sold for $1 million at auction in acts of casual and open money laundering. Soldiers sing as they march up to be victim to carnival shooting galleries. Quote, "Life is a horrible nightmare, and the only escape you will have is to remain in this world beyond time." Lucio Fulci. The moment of eclipse when the obese corpse of a billionaire overwhelms the fires of a crematorium. The mortician turns a knob to increase the fire, and the mass soon fades from existence. Quote, "The nature here is vile and base. I wouldn't see anything erotica here. I would see fornication and asphyxiation and choking and fighting for survival and growing and just rotting away. Of course, there is a lot of misery, but it is the same misery all around us. The trees are in misery. The birds are in misery. I don't think they sing, they just screech in pain." Werner Herzog. My fingernails dig into the soft clay. It's an awkward but necessary feeling in this moment of creation. The cold clay sticks to my skin. I spit into it as it takes shape. Hours later, I have remade my deceased daughter's face. I leave this statue with an open mouth and proceed to hollow it out and wait for it to dry. You don't want to be inside my mind. Hooded figures surround me armed with butcher knives. I cannot fight them off and instinctively cower. I don't beg for my life, but I keep repeating to them, why, while they kept coming close. As they raised their instruments, I couldn't make out any of their features, such as a mouth or eyes. They plunged their tools of unmaking into me, and it all went black. White-hot light burns my eyes to waken. A sterile room with mirrors everywhere is all I see. I am tied down and cannot see my body. Blurry movement to my left side. A mirror appears to rotate open and a hooded figure clad in white and black walks towards my immobilized being. It is in that moment where I realize I cannot speak or even scream. The figure eyes my body. I still cannot see their eyes, and then gives a head nod to an unknown voyeur. It goes black again. Wind and traffic noise awaken me for the last time. I'm standing up while surrounded by the skyline. I look down and see protrusions all over me, like a metallic stegosaurus abomination. I scream, and my voice has been replaced by a siren. I try to run, yet see no clear exit, but keep running anyway towards more sky. There is no floor. I fall. I can't stop screaming. There's a tall building in my path, and my screams keep rising in pitch. I crash into a building. My blood is flames, and I see myself fall away. Let the nukes fall. Glass cracks, slowly broken by a brutal mob. The barrier that assured the safety of those inside finally gives. Those who have never been part of this world are now forced to confront the worst of it as they break through. Copies of Howl are torn up and used as toilet paper. Beheading contests play on ESPN. Bibles become improvised bludgeoning tools. Atrocity after atrocity piled beyond the skies and well into orbit. The Club of Life is dead. Long live the Club of Life. Long live the quieted death cries of 1,000 children per hour. Long live the monarchy. Long live cancer. Long live the illusion of society. Long live lies and the death of sacred truths. Long live mindlessness. Long live hatred. Long live natural disasters. Long live newfound tortures. Long live chemical weapons. Long live necessary violence. Long live corruption. Long live distractions. Long live Eros and Thanatos. Long live an everlasting end. Long live all things that will bring about the end of man and our eternal suffering. Quote, I respect cancer and Adolf Hitler. Roger Watkins. I feel like I was born in the wrong part of the world. The store windows glare in the afternoon light. I stand in the corner across the street, seeing past the cheap glass and reflecting sky. No one pays me any attention. I see in that storefront a nude black mannequin. I don't know how I see it, but can feel its eminence. It reminds me of a very particular time, which was one of the darkest times for me, and for government purposes is heavily redacted, where I was beaten down and insulted beyond what I have previously endured and brought to a new level of pathetic disgrace. In that moment of shame, that now has transformed into a moment of insanity rekindled by the most benign of things, recalling Nietzsche protecting a whipped horse before his fall of cognizance. I unsheath my weaponry, revealing my scarred body, bedecked in cruel markings and improvised tattoos. My blades were picked up from the alleyways and stolen from stores. I have wrapped them around my body like a hedgehog. I scream, I have AIDS, as I run through the crowd, cutting them and charge at that mannequin. I arranged my coat to have an array of knives pointing towards my body, so that when I fall, I shall be guaranteed death and spread my disease. I reach the mannequin and jump. failing to break or even making a dent in the dirty glass, as I now slowly die, being forced to watch my reflection of failure. Born to a dead woman in a pit 1,000,000 miles below the Earth's surface. Falling water fills the mass graves at the black site nearest the border at Guyana. From afar, the crows watch with hungry eyes. Tractor noises play in the background. Low-key buildings decorate the dense jungle hiding underground abandoned missile silos. Within these corridors echo the torture of spies, recalling the witch trials. A European man with a difficult-to-pinpoint accent has his flesh twisted around a spiky probe. This device is a simplistic design which could be mistaken as a gigantic rotisserie chicken cooker. The man's flesh is tied around the spinner and pulled till it tears. It is a process that is teased and slowed until you eventually have a living, skinned man. Another bound captive is forced to watch footage of ultra-sadistic child porn. They're threatened with being made to be the fall guy of such distribution networks. Another is tied and injected with a potent derivative of Viagra and tarantula venom, leaving the victim with a painful priapism. The helpless are held down and forced to rape female spies, lowered onto them. These rapes are recorded and serve an additional, but yet unknown, function. This is noted and fed into an algorithm developing new forms of torture for intelligence. The quest for knowledge is ever different. I feel condemned, like I was born with cancer, and dying is an eventuality. If I'm going to die, then I choose redemption in death. For he killed the untouchables as he came from a repressed place. The other. You see the other in those moments. Not necessarily the darkest moments either, just fleeting grasps of it in that dangerous and taboo freedom. I load up the R-15, blessing it like it is my flaming sword. It is the mechanism that allows me to achieve apex. I will act on that repressed instinct, but in doing so will give it meaning. What I commit will be seen as a revolutionary act. It is also a confirmation of the worst man can behold, is just, and is susceptible to be a transformative action, i.e. when paint is applied to a blank canvas. The holy places are razed, churches and Walmarts fall, the highways melt from a nuclear fire. There are no more innocents, they are just vessels yet to experience inevitable corruption. My holy weapon will keep them pure. Emptying round after round into the lifeless and shuffling, I grit my teeth in a smile and imagine my weapon demolishing the statues of ancient gods. I am not their savior, but their unmaker. Quote, I dared. Rudolf Hess. The work is not quite like giving birth. This isn't my child. It's a kind of external transformation where you remain, but there is a new you that now exists. Example, cutting off a piece of yourself, and that piece grows to become a new life form. We have developed techniques to bring people back from the dead, utilizing the work that they've left behind, such as novels, music, autobiographies, independently verified, of course, paintings, and etc. The logic is that if the work is the result of one's summation of consciousness, then therefore utilizing the work as a base to reconstruct a consciousness and place that into a new brain and body will resurrect the original person. I am head researcher of one such project, out of dozens in progress. The subject selected in my division is Albert Einstein. We have scanned all of his materials and finished the reconstruction. When our Albert Einstein first spoke, it was a rambling speech that made no sense even to our best therapists. We monitored him and noticed traits not realized in his works, such as a cannibalism fetish. He also groped a female assistant feeding him, where he had to be restrained before he could do worse to her. before we exterminated our test subject. He was raving about building nuclear bombs for World War III, World War IV, and so on. We recreated the experiment and saw the same results each time. Work on our Nikola Tesla lead to him having the traits of a cult leader highly similar to the Reverend Jim Jones. We didn't terminate that subject. Bathwater receives the vital essences, blood and cum, a wrist cut and a hymen broken. The water sits still. I glance at it from my corner. I grin that my captors have expired. Now I am free. When they bent down to drink from me, it was my sole release, to numb the pain. And I saw them every morning, and every night in their vanities I know how they truly are and how they pretend to be something they're not. Unlike me, I'm just a faucet. I am a tool to be used. I would see them ever so carefully shave and pop their pimples. How I yearned for their razor to slip so I can taste new waters. I have tried suicide many times, but was unsuccessful. I had willed my insides to burst to poison them with lead, but I could only manage leaks. But now my former owner, along with his murdered child bride, has finally left me alone, free to rust away and never to be used again. I was asked what music do I like, and I answered that I prefer the sounds of livestock having their throats slit in the slaughterhouse. I wish to unmake myself. I hold the grenade close to my chest, with my head bowed to ensure it catches the full blast. I want nothing to remain, nothing that identifies that former person. I wish to not even resemble a human in this post-mortem state. I let go, so I will gladly no longer be human, and it would be as though I was never conceived. I will be a forgotten aphorism. I have become immune to the suffering of strangers. A man with slicked back hair in an all-black suit introduces himself. Do you hate people? Do you want to share that hate? A website address and app logo appear on the screen, a neo-fascist symbol featuring a cartoon takeoff on Abraxas as the mascot for a nihilist dating service. Their motto is, "Share your hate." In scrolling through candidates, I saw so many niche categories. Feeders not caring for the self and wishing to eat themselves to death. Self-harm addicts carve hearts over an opened artery, using the blood to write each other's names with the infinity symbol over their dying bodies. There are asexual philosophers justifying their want of no procreation, only begrudgingly participating in the tamest acts that avoid impregnation to avoid desire and want, saying that nihilism isn't far removed from Buddhist thought. On the other end, you have raucous lovers who intentionally conceive a child who skip hand in hand towards a planned parenthood and celebrate their abortion with chocolate and wine. Lovers who simply exist out of spite to those that they hate the most, with sex terrorists hosting orgies in order to spread AIDS and perpetuate new disease. The name of these parties is Destruction is Creation, and participants would be invited via Valentine's cards, emblazoned with a smiling Bonnie and Clyde. Quote, "Kill, kill, kill for inner peace. Please deliver unto me just a moment of happiness. I saved, and I saved for a lifetime. For this device, this sacred thing. I don't exactly know what it is, just that it gives you what you most desire as though a company mass-marketed magic lamps. I sought others for that moment of happiness, and they have denied me that. Dare I steal my happiness from theirs? Is it not selfishness to deny accommodation to the suffering? Get raped, save a life. Let the pitiable thing have their comfort like nuns in the beds of terminal patients. Is happiness even an earnable thing? In my eyes it is a lottery, and there are few choices in society's paradigm. But I have a choice in this device. I hit the button and let go. In a flash of light, I cease to be. Quote, bomb, bomb, bomb for mental health. It will end the pain. My life is nothing but pain. To finally die and let go of all these cursed thoughts and memories, all repressed desires, along with a million terrible etchings of my past, will be gone like a drained boil. Quote, therapy through violence. I die. In that moment where I let go, my being remains, and my thoughts are not purged, but become razor-sharp, where my entire history, including all knowledge, plays out in full in a lightning flash. I experience new sensations of warmth and a kind of fullness imbued with an alien power. The old me had indeed died, and the new me looks up and sees an iridescent sky with a rain of blood coating my entirety. In that baptism, every last vile thought is renewed with the fury of gods. My other half has been freed, and with it a profound need to act upon dark desires. I step out of the blood showers awakened as a new man, one lacking the repression ingrained in them by society. I have gained the most dangerous sort of expression of spontaneous creation, where I have fully given myself to the monster. Quote, working circle explosives. Bellies sliced open, skulls crushed, raped to death, limbs twisted, bones smashed, brains stabbed, hearts plucked, backs broken, tongues pulled away, teeth obliterated, flayed alive, burned, frozen, microwaved, poisoned. My murder spread to the hundreds of thousands. I am a Holocaust machine. To quote the bank, SPK, the evolution of humanity is written on the walls. From brains of flesh and blood we move onto a digitized mind. The question is then, where do we go from there? It can be presumed that we would exist as just a consciousness, perhaps a merged one, interconnectedness. The problem with that presumption is that not everyone is intelligent, even with all the tools now available to them. If a total consciousness happens, then what happens to the unintelligent? One of two things will happen. A rapture or the lower caste will be utilized as grist for the mill. The new mass genocide will not be conducted by nuclear material or new famines or bioterrorism. But when all humans have become digital is when the mass genocide will be enacted by malware. Prophecy of the Black Spider. I stumble among the bodies in search of truth. My first sexual experience was at 11. I'd become curious for the last 2 years, but didn't know how to masturbate. I tried, but couldn't feel pleasure. My parents were separating, and around this time I was left alone in the house a lot. I explored my parents' room and found porn and sex toys in the closet. One in particular caught my eye. It was a machine that looked like a mechanic spear. Seeing it deeply aroused me. I slid off my clothes and touched it. I didn't realize it was motion-activated and was taken by surprise. I got as far as caressing the phallus with my face, and before I knew it, I accidentally hit the rape switch. Plastic cords popped out and held me. I cried, but the moment my hymen was broken was when I achieved orgasm for the first time. The time has come to end this worthlessness, to end sloth and worry, to become no longer harmless but cruel. My body is wrecked with pain. The cancer keeps spreading, and I can even smell the rot emanating from my flesh. My family has abandoned me long before it came to this. The only thing I can do is beg for more painkillers and to finally die. The bucket list trip I had planned was scrapped suddenly when I collapsed in the arms of a waitress at a cheap restaurant. My insurance took care of the ambulance ride while the whore went through my wallet during the seizures, before blacking out. The only thing left is to hope for death. My hospital gown is open and I have no underwear on. The breeze feels good, and I can barely move before I notice my door creaking open and the auburn-haired nurse sneaks in. She appears middle-aged, and mildly overweight. I can barely say anything to her except moan as she looks at me with a frown and pursed lips. She pulls up a chair to sit beside me and motions her left hand underneath my gown, coercing my cock to erection. I can only look on pathetically as she works my shaft, and I want to say, "Thank you," but can only cry. As my pen slides across the paper, wrists are slit down the arms and lives empty out. When the point is pressed, guns cock and high-rise windows open. With each letter, guns fire and people fall. When a word forms, miscarriages and forced abortions follow. As a sentence ends, truth is reinterpreted as lies and bias. When a paragraph ends, that corrupted truth leads to coups and assassinations. When a word is deleted, vengeance is dealt. When a page completes, bombs drop and hellfire missiles fire. When a page is deleted, spree shooters take families. When a book completes, I see something no longer me and the old me dies. Quote, "Love is the only weapon. Shit. Bullshit. Martin Luther King died with love. Kennedy died talking about something he couldn't even understand, some kind of generalized love, and he didn't even back it up. He fucked up. Bullshit. Love is the only weapon with which I have to fight. I have a hell of a lot of weapons to fight. I got my claws, I got cutlasses, I got guns, I got dynamite, I got a helluva lot to fight. I will fight. I will fight. I will fight. I will fight." The Reverend Jim Jones. I wish to construct a nuclear bomb. I admire that power. There's a purity and godly terror. It is something that no one man possess, not unless he is insane, and possess a detonator with a bomb on his person. By becoming such a weapon, I will be more than no longer human, but the beginning of their end. Quote, "Let the night roar." The Reverend Jim Jones. There is nothing on the radar. It's just another patrol near the Russian border, and thankfully, no activity aside from an intermittent, bright light that I'm required to radio in. I've seen these lights before when flying, and when I've inquired about them, I am officially told nothing as to what they are. The Lockheed SR-72 continues its course, and I notice the bright lights have been slowly expanding. The instruments malfunction, and for the first time while flying, I panic. The light envelops me in an instant and shows me things. I see myself nude in a chair being tortured by Chinese. There's a translator in the corner playing bad cop. An American in a Hawaiian t-shirt in the other corner watches. I'm given two choices. Give them the intelligence, and I die a quick death, or don't, and they kill my family. I choose the former, and mercifully have my brains blown out. But yet I keep being shown more. My family is being interviewed on the news and questions my disappearance. A month later, the CIA kills my family in a car accident. Their deaths aren't deemed newsworthy. I now understand why I was shown this. I hit the eject button on the console and refuse to pull the cord to release the parachute. Vui canis majoris. Vermin crawl atop me. Barking dogs in hunting packs. Crying girls beaten by their fathers. Babies suckle from their dead mothers. I drown in the STDs you spread. I hear and feel it all, right down to the tiny heartbeats of mice nesting in the perpetually rising rotten garbage. And I especially feel the wet fur and parasitic fleas they host. The endless noise, a cacophony of voices, merges to just one indecipherable scream spread throughout the universe. Walls are useless, for I see everything. I am the conductor of an unseen force. I am the terrible epicenter through which evil thrives. I have willed the merciful and naive to have leaps of faith through minefields. I have let the roaches in governments partake in insect orgies in public square. I see what makes you human, all the internal organs, the slowly breaking bones, bent teeth, gut bacteria, the fungus and trillions of microscopic life that make you. I see and know all of God's abominations. How inconsequential, as pitiful and banal as bending down to save a struggling fly in the spider's web. My altar rings of effervescence, and it draws in yet another one who kneels before me, bathing in gasoline and taking to my flames. Vui canis majoris. I induce entire generations of fertile eggs of man to be born deformed, bereft of mouths, ears, or eyes. I cause the evil and ancient man to survive what should have been his fatal stroke and summon a far-off Armageddon. I see the beginnings of life on the tiny Europa. There is a promise of something not of man, but something new, and never seen before in that planet, for it holds water and the speculation of life. In the fantasies of visionaries and scientists is the infinite possibilities, and above all else a hope in Europa. I look into those waters of the virgin planet and drool onto it a life-extinguishing poison. A black hole begins its slow opening, blooming in 500 billion years. It is my sacred child. I let the earth remain for its slow death. Spiral provides my amusement, and especially the unceasing atrocities. My altar glows and receives them in my name. Such sacrifices. I am pure in my evil. Via canis majoris, and lack the cancer of life forms. And if evil is pure, hereto evil rules the universe. My altar has a new bloodlust, and I allow comets to enter Earth's orbit. They shall arrive in 500 years, and what life that will remain I will oversee, as I have since the beginning of the beginning. I scan the empty fireplace and memorize the finest details of soot and ash. The semi-disintegrated bricks make it look like a sacred gateway, beckoning for fuel to open. A bird chirps and breaks my concentration. I turn to look for the source of noise, and it suddenly flies by and rests on my shoulder. Its flight disturbs the trash on the floor and hanging cobwebs. I lie so motionless in my studies that the bird seems to trust me or think I'm a scarecrow. In a moment I grab the creature and crush the air from its body. I take the bird's body and throw it into the fireplace, where the flames leave nothing behind in an hour's time. After it cools, I sift my hands through the warm ashes, and I see the future. A blond boy looks out through the window of his home, hearing the ice cream man. When he runs outside, the ice cream man steps out with an A-20 shotgun and empties the drum into the child, leaving only bits of flesh and cloth behind. The sidewalk was so heavily painted that no cleaning could remove such scarring, and the stone was eventually replaced. I thank the godly fires for showing me this, and shall report my findings. My goal in life is to prevent another 9/11. I need to see more because I'm going to save the world. A family abducted, mother, father, son. I chose them as according to the direction of the fire. All the words they say to me are like distant wails from something not of my species. I throw the youngest into the brimstone portal, for they are the lightest meat, and I see a man freeze to death on the surface of the sun. I wish to see more and offload the rest of the sacred sacrifice in one go. They are laid down in the firehead first, and as they started to burn, I grant them mercy by decapitating them. I shall prevent all worldly horrors, and their pain is just a drop in the bucket by comparison. I bathe in their fiery ashes as a form of thanks for their contribution. Quote, "The body without soul is no longer at the sacrifice. At the day of death it come to rebirth. The divine spirit will make the soul rejoice, seeing the eternity of the world. Nostradamus, my confession, this raw data dump, will list my temptations. I make this oath to myself as I see the voluptuous woman before a napalm sunrise, with religious mantras tattooed upon her breasts and pubis. as the fiery woman dances and coaxes me to take off the mask. I oblige by removing my face and can see it in her eyes' reflection, seeing the maw of my mouth, a dark hole where the nose once resided, and hollow flesh-filled eyes. She crouches and whispers to my ear so to forget and move on. Let the worms cavort. Be not with them. Be not in this time. We are not destined for rebirth, but an end to our pain and misery. I say unto her, how she is wrong, allowing myself to burn forever from her touch and reject her modernity. The body I lie next to has a tattoo at the nape of its neck, love scars. They were mine. I knew it from first contact upon seeing their eyes. You are mine. I sent this to them telepathically. They hated me, spat on me, stabbed me, called me a mortal enemy, and they say to love thy enemies. I caress the rest of the rotten back, tracing the bulging spine and planting intermittent kisses upon it. I push my fingers through the loose flesh and imagine them swooning. I am plunged into something right out of bad erotic poetry. Bad porn dialogue plays in my mind when I reach the anus where I give it a taste and prepare for a feast. I tear away pieces of my lover and consume them in a penultimate emotional release. Doing this causes my eyes to tear up as I come, and in the mirror above the bed, I resemble Goya's Saturn devouring his children. You should be locked away so you can never hurt normal people. To be submerged. Give yourself to nature's rapture, be it drowning or being burned alive in a forest fire. I'd rather be buried. Assembling a butchered body to find the key. I hold them hostage. I flick the cylinder like I've seen in movies to be more menacing, poking out their eyes with the barrel's tip to keep them in check. Nuclear family sitcom bullshit. They beg me to let them go. I say nothing for a long while and stare without blinking, pondering. For a long time, I simply ponder and let my eyes go adrift while memorizing their features. I pull the smallest away from them as the mother screams and the father curses me. I present a second pistol, an M1911, and threaten the youngest with my revolver that I was playing with. With the youngest, kneeling at my gun barrel, I asked them if they know about our Bud Dwyer, and they told me that they knew nothing about him. While still holding my revolver to the head of the youngest, I maneuver my phone with its 6-inch display and play for them our Bud Dwyer's public suicide, where he blew his brains out during a news conference. The children cry and the parents look at me in puzzlement. I tell them to play Russian roulette with the revolver and explain how it's loaded with only one bullet. The children have long since pissed themselves. The parents reluctantly do this while crying and telling each other how much they love them. Click, click, click. The pistol wasn't even loaded. I leave a pair of scissors close enough where they can free themselves, and I make my escape. To be reborn, you must first be broken. Quote, the truth will set you free. John 8:32. The gun is on the table and fully loaded with hollow point rounds. I study it for hours while mentally playing out what I'm about to do. Pick it up, cock it, put the weapon to my temple so I don't just shoot my face off, pull the trigger, release the hammer. I then play backwards everything that lead to this point, the consequences of knowledge. I had understood the guiding force of politics before I could even truly comprehend it. Beyond a general distrust of government and conspiracy fiction, I have been informed of the way things actually are. It's a matter of necessary evil. Every dictatorship has stood as a way to control a situation. When a dictator is removed is when a situation is no longer in control, i.e. Haiti, Iraq, Syria, etc. The dictator is terrible, but without that control, it goes from terrible to unsalvageable. especially a dictator that serves the interest of the dominate nation. Afghanistan is another situation. The source of the Taliban's funding is the poppy fields. We could easily create a poppy seed that would wipe out the crops and make the ground sour for over 100 years. A colonel takes such an idea to the United Nations. He's told what a great idea that is, and DuPont could create such a seed. Time passes, and nothing moves forwards. The colonel questions what's happened, and he's told to be quiet and threatened. Think about this. Why haven't the poppy fields been destroyed yet? My hypothesis is that the poppies are controlled by the CIA and their spread is used to weaken Russia and kill off the lower class throughout the world. I ponder these thoughts and their ramifications for hours while still staring at that gun. Quote, "To be an honest man is to be wicked." Marquis de Sade, Philosophy in the Bedroom. Did you know that Nabokov's final work was supposed to be about the bombing of Hiroshima and Nagasaki? It was going to be very explicit and his most controversial work. Someone let slip to him how his novel Lolita inspired the Japanese. He was set to create a work of revenge erotica where the irradiated bodies, still branded with the designs of kimonos from the blasts, would dance in violent orgies. Further planes would be deployed to annihilate Japan in his fantasies, one of which named the Lolita Express. Quote, "We've killed over 10 million niggers. We control this country." Colonel redacted. On CIA involvement in Angola. I want to show what is not yet ready, an incomplete thing that can be guided to completion. This is excusable when you remember parents who show the X-ray of their unborn, another unfinished work. Quote, "The truth will set you free." John 8:32. The gun is on the table and fully loaded with hollow point rounds. I study it for hours while mentally playing out what I'm about to do. Pick it up, cock it, put the weapon to my temple so I don't just shoot my face off, pull the trigger, release the hammer. I then play backwards everything that lead to this point, the consequences of knowledge. I had understood the guiding force of politics before I could even truly comprehend it. Beyond a general distrust of government and conspiracy fiction, I have been informed of the way things actually are. It's a matter of necessary evil. Every dictatorship has stood as a way to control a situation. When a dictator is removed is when a situation is no longer in control, i.e. Haiti, Iraq, Syria, etc. The dictator is terrible, but without that control, it goes from terrible to unsalvageable, especially a dictator that serves the interest of the dominate nation. Afghanistan is another situation. The source of the Taliban's funding is the poppy fields. We could easily create a poppy seed that would wipe out the crops and make the ground sour for over 100 years. A colonel takes such an idea to the United Nations. He's told what a great idea that is, and DuPont could create such a seed. Time passes, and nothing moves forwards. The colonel questions what's happened, and he's told to be quiet and threatened. Think about this. Why haven't the poppy fields been destroyed yet? My hypothesis is that the poppies are controlled by the CIA and their spread is used to weaken Russia and kill off the lower class throughout the world. I ponder these thoughts and their ramifications for hours while still staring at that gun. Quote, "To be an honest man is to be wicked." Marquis de Sade, Philosophy in the Bedroom. Did you know that Nabokov's final work was supposed to be about the bombing of Hiroshima and Nagasaki? It was going to be very explicit and his most controversial work. Someone let slip to him how his novel Lolita inspired the Japanese. He was set to create a work of revenge erotica where the irradiated bodies, still branded with the designs of kimonos from the blasts, would dance in violent orgies. Further planes would be deployed to annihilate Japan in his fantasies, one of which named the Lolita Express. Quote, "We've killed over 10 million niggers. We control this country." Colonel Red Cactid on CIA involvement in Angola. I want to show what is not yet ready, an incomplete thing that can be guided to completion. This is excusable when you remember parents who show the X-ray of their unborn, another unfinished work. Writing in defense of crime. I was born to be this, to be a cog in the wheel. I want to be used for greater things. In the military, you are nothing. You are subservient. You are less than garbage. There is the lie of working for a cause, which in truth is the continuing enrichment of the military-industrial complex. You are demeaned. You have no control over your destiny. You are the dirt from which flowers grow. I am held by a stranger I met in a bar. We had a few drinks, and I desired a quick fuck. Before I knew it, I had blacked out and woke up immobilized in a bathtub. I feel nothing, and wonder if I am in my dying moments, or am in purgatory. The stranger brings with him a handful of tools and a large glass bottle as he wakes me up. I am raped. The stranger presents a drill and presses it to the back of my skull. I wish I could scream. I see nothing but can still hear. I feel a hot liquid rushing from my wound. It burns. I soon can't hear anything either. Later on, after fainting, my eyelids are peeled open and the stranger screams orders at me, demanding that I kneel and bow before him. My eyelids tire and I'm in so much pain. I just want sleep. The stranger continues screaming at me until I fall over myself. During my last breath, I see in the reflection of a TV screen the stranger positioning his limp cock to the back of my skull. Only the few can afford the luxury of being disassembled and rebuilt. I dig into the soil, vanishing in an instant at my touch, searching for the ripest body among the billions. This is but a moment in time. At another point I will be sat at the throne, surrounded by those whose time is not precious, so they waste mine. At another I die in this very same soil, allowing myself to be buried, happy to let go. From the innumerous parts I pull away, the disembodied head of a smiling man, preserved in an ever-flowing puddle of wine and blood, and take it into my domain. It is a sparse place hidden in blackness. I look at the head very carefully. I am unique in my creativity and can see what no one else sees. You wonder at times, a self-doubt, if it's like the insane who have visions or frauds that claim to speak to the dead. I look at the stump of the neck, so awkwardly cut, and begin my project. I grab a selection of tiny skewers and insert them through the neck into the head. In my evisceration, I recreate the dead into a beautiful thing where the skewers ever shine, even through the slit left in the mouth. I set my creation on the table and stare at it, pondering as though it were a crystal ball. I am God. I look down over you and control your fate. I see a tiny isle of natives that are blissfully unaware of my being. I am the magnifying glass, and they are the ants. Today is a bright and sunny day. I see the peaceful families preparing their meal. They've never even seen a white man before in the entirety of their tribe's existence. I know they have a life expectancy of 40 due to inbreeding. The ground roars with steam, rocks stir, and mud puddles instantly evaporate. The primitive people look up as I rain fire upon them. The Pompeii eruption plays briefly in my memory as I see the primitives fall at my power. They don't just burn, but melt away in an instant. The grotesquerie in their demise is only matched by the mercy bestowed by me through a quick death. It was a good test. I see a new ocean now, brimming with pollution and easily resembling sewage. There is an impending army that I shall bury using the very thing they utilize as a latrine. I will return them to their original state. A monsoon buries the Indian Army near the border of Pakistan, along with many cities, 20,000 casualties. Quote, God is dead, and I have killed him. Nikola Tesla. I was born in a cage. I cannot see and am forced to feed. I can feel a nearby fire, almost like I'm being slowly rolled into an oven. Voices, all the time, the voices. I know they're talking about me. I also hear screams and fuck noises. I can never sleep. My limbs feel weighed down by over 1,000 pounds. I try to speak, but cannot hear my own voice. I wait in this purgatory. I make out through all the voices that this is my birth, and they've already named me something I disagree with. I summon every iota of strength to strangle myself. I'd rather be born dead. Love is pain. The floor has words appearing before me. Fuck, kill, repeats for several rows amid endless gibberish. It isn't a sign. It is not my projection of insanity. I look to the walls and ignore those messages. Along the walls I see deformed faces everywhere staring back at me. They move in unison, like a wave. They mouth something, but I refuse to read it all. My walls of imprisonment darken. I rub my eyes multiple times to know I'm fully awake. Fuck, kill gets larger in font and appear written with black blood. But I am not insane. I am a brain, an essence without a body, and around me are my brothers and sisters. My mind will join them to become legion and ever stronger, so that I will never need that body again. Their bodies are tools, my means to achieve. The billions plugged in, ever dwindling, connected to the roaring machine erupting from the middle of desert and taller than Everest. The billions that live and die in a full life cycle, having never left their master. But how can I be the only one to see it? Is it possible that once you have been to the most extreme ends of pain, your perspective shifts, and therein is a transformation, where you see those repressed things with a new cursed insight? There's a metaphor there of a colony of man that have never stepped away from comfort until it is forced upon them, forced to feed the machine. The beast looks down at them in a passing glance, where they display permanent smiles, marking themselves for it, defined by the thing, defined by their consumerism, anointed by it, all for an audience of lobotomy patients. Noise reverberates with the hum of electronic life, where you cannot hear the human voice. The pious keep plugging away, paying for the privilege to be the first to die for it, birthing new sounds in the unending ravaging of their flesh. The machine watches as couples greet each other face to face before being crushed together and molded into a new commodity. Breasts squeezed until they rupture like a cyst, and testicles split open like they were clam hiding a pearl, destroying first those flesh objects once lovingly beheld. There is no need for children, as they are willingly sterilized and fall into place, in acts of flesh-machine intersex, in a state of illiterate bliss, worshipping the god of technology. Quote, I am the expression of all creation. Hermann Nietzsche. In the near future, man will have the ability to genetically alter themselves. The pluses would be obvious, like the end of all hereditary disorders, but also a refinement of the human condition to its likely physical peak. From a corner where they remain oblivious to my presence, I watch them. I see a row of 4 well-dressed men, casually waiting for their whores to arrive. They talk business, stock market bullshit, and the value of the UN. A buzzer sounds off, and the whores are prodded in, bringing with them a breeze that momentarily disturbs me. The men beam with dirty smiles. The whores were specially procured virgin males, fed hormones, and were bred to be transgender. They are now more beautiful than the ancient whores of Babylon. They are much rarer than common sex androids, available at Walmart, or the grown human fuck toys, physically perfect, but born without brains. The trans prostitutes suck the men off. Genetic engineering has outfitted them with the cocks of horses, replete with discoloration, a small price, alleviated with skin bleaching. The prostitutes nearly choke to death as quickly as they begin this obligation. This excludes one whose throat was modified for such a task. The men laugh amongst themselves, and they then direct the whores to kneel and present their assholes. The oldest man unsheaths the glove over his right hand and brags how the flesh on the entirety of his right arm has been enhanced to be as sensitive as a cock. From the fingertips to his elbow, he receives the same sensations. He jokes he can't come from his right hand yet. Without any preparation or even the illusion of foreplay, the man with a modified arm shoves his fist inside one whore. The whore screams in pain, which just encourages the man to reach further, for he will bestow upon this disposable body a valuable pain. The rest of the gentlemen proceed to fuck the remaining whores to death, their cocks penetrating the intestines, modified to go deeper until one whore vomits blood. One has barely survived the onslaught, and so one man presents his cock to the weeping survivor's face and demands a kiss. The whore, thoroughly exhausted and bloody, reluctantly obliges. The man's cock unfurls with a set of fangs and attacks the survivor's face, emitting a kind of poison semen once the assault concludes. As I watch this from my corner, a tiny female falls into my web, and I am inspired. Quote, I want to master life and death. Ted Bundy. Packed in line and separated by gender. The soldier coaxes us with his pointed rifle. Children stay in a separate group. People are scared but oddly nonchalant about the situation. They talk amongst themselves, always talking. I look down, not wishing to talk to others, and I move a stone around with my bare feet. There's another soldier over 100 yards away, holding their weapon casually. I visualize myself running for their weapon. No one else appears to notice how slack the soldier actually is. Could I make it before they open fire? I subtly scan my surroundings and look for snipers or anyone anywhere watching me. There's a mysterious shadow on a rooftop. I then hypothesize that I could be a sacrifice and my gesture would inspire the others to revolt. Yet they continue their aimless talking and loudly whimper on occasion. I wait for hours in line, waiting for others to make the first move, and no one does. Perhaps they'll let us go, or perhaps there is a God. Later the soldiers open fire and take me along with the crowd. The simulation ends. I slide off the goggles and am disappointed at my hesitation. Acting through the life of a victim of genocide is a learning experience. What represses me from killing all of you is before you. Buildings collapse from their own weight due to poor construction. Children dance arm in arm in acid rain. New tools replace the old, and hatchets and hammers renders mobs of the insane to blood and bone. We're all vampires, a row of nude women raped in every orifice until blood drips from their ears, eyes, and nose. A painter captures their expression for all eternity, finding a meaning in pain. Quote, think of the work and not about the result. A phrase seared into my brain that can never be undone, a hatred of God and man that's been echoing in my consciousness for over a decade now. I imagine it to be a final condemnation from a judge, be it at holy gates or otherwise. It's a phrase that my internal voice whispers evilly in a giant dark room, booming with echo. That's when receding into your brain will fail, when the brain has already been thoroughly poisoned. I write this all out by hand, as it has a more personal touch to it, and reread it aloud 7 times. I stare at the text for a long time, like I just wrote my confession to murder. I don't wish anyone to see within my mind. If they did, I imagine they would die then and there out of some horrible curse. If computers can read our thoughts and reinterpret them, then I truly believe that my thoughts would create a virus. I stop writing and pick up the drill, attach the drill bit, and shall attempt trepanation as an act of self-exorcism. Quote, "Let your work express your inner God." I slide in between the dead skin and sour suit. I taste what was once a man now reduced to sentimental manure. I imagine that in my consumption of a former being that I will inherit their vast knowledge. Quote, "Approach your work as you would." I see the endless prattle and tribes dedicated to madness. I see in the hopeful speeches of those called friends endless atrocities. A nude woman with long hair, crucified and dissected against a sunset. I see in the mirthful union, in blessed ignorance, a maelstrom of every possible variation of murder. When I see happy families, I see empty graves receive the separated head of their owner fresh from the guillotine, screaming faces in pain, screaming in unison atop a giant face howling with them before a dying star. In every birth of the beautiful babe, I see the sacred act of cannibalism for those seeking new experiences. For every last act of joy, I see the darkness of the universe in reflection, a family in bondage, a chainsaw to the necks of the parents while the tender sow hides in between them. The sow is drenched in their blood while its parents' heads roll along the ground and stop in a post-mortem kiss. I see happy suicides in their millions, sacrifices clad in white thrown from rooftops in the name of Muhammad. From a child autopsy, flowers bloom in the agape mouth and chest cavity and every open hole. A butcher knife hammered into the skull as though the victim was a New Age vampire. The blade breaks after the 3rd hammer blow. Upon an imminent annihilation, a confessor hurriedly tells all their misdeeds to their smartphone on a live stream. I see a beautiful valley, speckled with the ruinations of warfare, where bodies strike a pose with a contented smile for an imaginary camera. The public square hosts executions by solar-powered electric chairs. Gut bacteria becomes a fashion statement, while the human products propagate this through movies, podcasts, video games, and number stations, ending with people who follow these trends dying of dysentery. The eventuality of technology, where family and legacy are no longer needed, reverting to an age where the family man murdering his family will be looked upon as quaint as when mankind still possessed a pinky toe. Lovers fucking atop spiked pillars before this hellscape. I see the choice being made to embrace doled-up cadavers as the night roars and an ocean of bodies from suicide wash ashore. I see the faces in the center of the universe of all great and terrible men in the entirety of history at their moment of actuality, where every deed, both holy and evil, at once repeats for infinity. I see a future where free speech will be torrented under VPN in soundproof rooms, and those communicators wear masks to avoid facial recognition. I see the oncoming holy war and know its motive. Exterminate the masses. Start over. The experiment failed. We will colonize new galaxies. Realization of the future. Quote, "I do not consent to not having created my body myself, and I hate and renounce as a coward every being who consents to live without first having recreated himself." Antonin Artaud. The Black Cosmos, where there is no reflection, it is a vacuum, It is where all the good thoughts end, be it a god or a black hole with fangs. I am faced with the swirling light with its overwhelming sense of being irrelevant in the face of a far greater thing, more than knowing your family and your history and either surpassing or failing them. It is a confluence of all forces of nature, and I am the sole audience for this event. And in creation's dark miracle, I see a new life form that is not human. And in that beauty, there is hope that all things will end in a welcomed finality. I hope that souls cannot be reborn. Let the soul be grist for the mill and become spare parts for something better than humanity, better than me. Quote, "The thought of suicide is a great consolation. By means of it, one gets through many a dark night." Nietzsche. I look up at the endless stars. The bright LEDs from trucks steal my attention, and for a moment I welcome oblivion before they pass, as telephone poles in the mist resemble decomposing crucifixes. I am in a trance. I am committed to this pilgrimage to rebuild myself. With each step, the stars illuminate with hellfire, and I discover never-before-seen constellations. I see my reason to exist, the great work. I see the many minds that have passed. I see men that are not my family that I connect to on this cosmic level. A gory tree of life made from man's spare parts. There's an array of corpses grown one out of another, pointing towards all directions like a Christmas tree with hanging deformities in jars as ornaments. Those who had come before me, frozen by death's grace, joined in an ever-climbing spire. Their energy still pouring outwards from their former being, as the meager circumstance of the human form cannot hold that entirety which now fuels new stars. The body becomes manure for a new and better thing, no longer just ideas but philosophies and imagery, beyond description, not yet ready for their time. This is an energy that must be spread, be it viral or spiritual. I see myself there on the tree. My body is filleted, but I cannot be sure if I'm alive or dead yet. Seeing the former me doesn't resonate fear or pity, but a nothingness, as I've already seen enough of that former being in dirty mirrors. My internal organs push outwards, a sack of white, bulging from my lower torso. I cannot fathom that this is the physical manifestation of my pain, because it feels so far beyond that. Ahead of my body is a layer of darkness that I cannot see past, that the stars have yet to brighten. I assume that the darkness hides more sacrifices leading the way. I take on the bold task of reinterpreting Nietzsche in the form of children's books. I will be the next Heidegger. I dedicate an entire book to the idea of eternal recurrence, with a happy child being informed by a laughing dragon. The book sells moderately, but children that have read the book have been reported with severe depression. They spend every day in worry that this is their last, and what time they've wasted. Sales of anxiety medication and Ritalin have risen dramatically as a result. Luckily, I had stocks in such companies. There cannot be art if it is not inherently dangerous. In the near future, we can implant the brains of fetuses with knowledge. I sold it to the publics, promising it would end bedwetting forever. And I made $1 million bonus that year in marketing. It began a new industry, guiding the future of children. We take a tiny implant, gently enter the womb, and inject it into the fetus. With cellular and Wi-Fi signals, we feed it information. The costs matched the goals. $5,000 to be a college grad, $10,000 to be a celebrity, $50,000 to be president, and as low as $1,000 just to beat generations of addiction. Results not guaranteed. The children sometimes, but not often, claim to want to control their fate, a naive idea, and try to rip out the implant or scramble it with magnets. We advised the parent or guardian not to inform them that procedure was done to them. I stopped caring about how I am perceived. A dingy kitchen illuminates with sunlight and stained blood. I step forwards, leaving a fresh footprint in the process. A TV set in the background plays a sitcom where the plot is about buried treasure while a Middle Eastern man screams out his window something I cannot recognize as he's holding the severed head of his wife as a war trophy. I take off the VR goggles and have it explained to me. The idea is to add more depth to the everyday. You are there, you are culpable, you are the victim. Can you change any of that? Explained to me by an obese man in a suit a size too small for him. I shake my head as though I'm agreeing, but I just want to leave. The obese man's sidekick chips in. What we plan to do is to take something real and create that into art. We have virtual reality art that allows you to enter inside a painting. What's better than to explore a crime scene? His hands form a square like a camera lens and frames the sky. You are there at the Manson family murders, or better yet, the Jonestown mass suicide. Think of the educational value. Am I broken? Did they see me? No. I lay back and let a shadow hide me. I fucked up by leaving a piece of myself behind for them to find. Nothing too incriminating, no map to the buried bodies or weapons cache. I lean motionless with my back to the wall, contemplating. You could confuse me for sleeping with my eyes open. From the corner of my eye, I could swear I was spotted. I didn't panic, but decided to look back until I could confirm my solitude. Now they know. I repeat that several times in a whisper, a tiny shred or puzzle piece of what I am. Those who had aided and befriended me can now speculate what I really am. They saw just a glimmer. I imagine their reactions, confusion, betrayal, and most of all a fear of having known an enemy so intimately. It's because they saw a glimpse of my face beneath the mask. That is, a Pandora's box where he who you once saw as a friend was plotting you and your comrades' downfall. Not me, however. I know not to trust them. I see beneath their masks, and often see a banal emptiness. Harmless and predictable as they are not saboteurs of their species, unlike myself. I am a spy sent on behalf of a new subspecies, and what I left behind may be interpreted as a warning to the rest of them that you can never truly know anyone. Quote, I am free of all prejudice. I hate everyone equally. W.C. Fields. I have freed myself. What you see before you is the reason why I haven't killed you, and my pain is now yours. I am alone in a room filled with corpses. I am cured. I am the knowing plague carrier. They think they know me. In the great abyss I look into it and see nothing. The inner child is bludgeoned to death. I am my own exorcist. I am nothing. I am not a god. I am not human. The sky shows an angel falling with wings outstretched and landing with a thud in suicide. The hands of a god clenches a full stadium and crushes it where there's an immense flash flood of gore. I bite into the unconsecrated offering, tasting old sweat and tearing through the metal bones, consuming a metallic human offering that survived being buried in the sun's core. The confused senile creature wanders like a child looking for a parent. I oblige by leading them to a cliff's edge. They ask why I perpetuate horror, and I ask them if they live in the real world. No safety, no survivors. I peel off my flesh to receive the uniform, arteries open in torrents to fill the sacred goblet. I look up at the sky as I fall, received by an awaiting mob with shark faces. I knowingly embrace Mars and receive that cold death. I am not enlightened. I am still not human. I am an end with no beginning. The dark skies, warm with over 1 million bodies on the fires, a confession to madness. In a red room, an androgynous monarch sits on a throne. On each side of the throne is a nude, impaled body from anus to mouth. One body is an old man, and other is a female child. The monarch watches as an executioner wearing a mask of stitched-together presidential faces. Clinton, Bush, Obama, and Reagan, with a mask in ode to Leatherface, and slit the throats of bound captives. Quote, "The illegal we do immediately, the unconstitutional takes a little longer." Henry A. Kissinger. There is a man in a sensory deprivation chamber fed multiple hallucinogenics over a period of 48 hours without sleep. A tiny radio informs him over the entire history of America and its foreign policy. The topic of MKUltra comes up. He is told about Dr. Gottlieb and Fort Bragg, and he says out loud, "I remember that from an episode of Inspector Gadget." Quote, "I came here to tell you the truth, the good, the bad, and the ugly." Oliver North. A prisoner is hoisted up, surrounded by darkness. A booming noise is played, and from their head bursts hundreds of mice, where they immediately fall in a mechanic churn. Quote, "Wherefore is Abraxas terrible? Carl Jung, a being dressed in black, approaches a frightened woman. She takes to all fours as he presents a bent cock with a wooden texture and flowery thorns at its sides. She fellates him and gags with blood and vomit. The being leaves after emptying his seed into her, and she recoils in spasms. In her deathly seizures, her belly expands, like in a grotesque pregnancy, and at once she rapidly ages to her senile years, her crotch decorated with liver spots, her scalp going from its natural dark colors to gray, and to finally white, where she soon dies of old age with her belly full. Years later, her belly opens upon the discovery of archaeologists. They see an ugly child that makes no noise, and they feed it to the wolves outside. If there weren't a being observing me and enforcing its rules upon me, I would commit terrible crimes." In a factory, a bound couple kiss in their final moments. A gigantic knife, twice the size of their bodies, impales both of them in an instant, where they bleed to death. There is an assembly line of elderly people utilizing the cadavers of infants to build new machinery. There's a structure, a killer moving from room to room within a black site fulfilling their orders, while the entirety of history is retold to new recruits, and they are brainwashed with Demerol-induced comas. The killer goes back to their creation, approaching a woman giving birth before all matter of religious iconography. The killer enters her head first and emerges out the other side in flames. Quote, "And which is more, you'll be a man, my son." Rudyard Kipling, I.F. You look at yourself in the mirror for a long while until what you see blurs. I insert the earbuds and turn up the volume to the loudest, and then go into the settings of the MP3 player and turn the volume even louder. I don't care about the possibility of going deaf. The music plays as I keep walking and imagining I'm walking down a golden bridge to another place. But in doing so, I regretfully play out my past. I was 10 years old, and I woke up in a basement. An older woman I knew as a neighbor looms over me with her droopy breasts presented to me. I quickly realized she stripped me down and had me handcuffed. She tries to seduce me, but I'm not attracted to her. Years later, I wonder if I'm gay. She gets mad that I reject her and grabs me by the hair and bashes my head against the wall. She quickly apologizes as I feel blood dribble past my forehead. She presses her breasts to my lips and demands I suckle from her. I reluctantly do so until she straddles herself on top of me and grabs me by the throat, choking me until I almost pass out as she rapes me. The woman became pregnant, and I then owed child support at the age of 11. I attempted to get on social services, but because I'm a single male, my support was limited. I keep listening to this one song about saving the world. I hang out at a mall most of my days in raggedy clothes. One day I see a mother slap her child and scream at them. I decide to follow them home, and the pistol I had kept for my suicide, I used on the woman. The child ran, but led me to 2 baby girls in a nursery, and I decided to draw them a bath with boiling water. I left the boy alone and fled before the husband showed up. It was then my mind was made up, and I sought out the mother of my child who lives across town. If you're wondering what happened to her after my rape, then I'm sad to inform you that nothing happened other than my continued misery. My lover is ancient now, and I see her teenage daughter, maybe my daughter, leaving the home, escorted by an aunt who chides her for her autism. I break in without a plan and confront the woman and kill her, and then myself. I tried to create, but ended up creating a temple of self-mockery. Quote, I'm going to do something for all of them. I'm going to give them something they've never dreamed, something nobody's ever done. And then I'll show them. I'll show them what I can do. Become something more. Something firm, something bold, something you've never experienced before. Terry Hawkins, Last House on Dead End Street. I stare into the black screen, awaiting a response. I hold it in my hand for a long time. I am stranded in the void and don't want to believe that I'm the last survivor. The screen illuminates and shows me things. Droves of people drive to a secluded forest in complete silence. I make note of their numbers, easily over 50, as the forest opens up as though it were sentient. Once the drivers arrive at their destination, servants open the doors for them, and before them are a crowd of rabid people greedily looking at their new guests. The guests remain silent, undress, and fall in line with their hosts. A tribal drum beat plays and becomes more intense by the minute. Their hosts unsheath ritualistic weaponry, bent spears along with curved swords like melted crosses, and the guests are revealed to be offerings. In tune with the drum beats is a harmonic destruction, bodies impaled and cut to pieces, the orchestrators of such annihilation celebrating the occasion with a euphoric display as though the war had been won and the earth has been saved. Men and women divided up by body parts and thrown into an immense bowl painted of gold that will receive their former beings. From that emerges in flowing blood, lovers hand in hand, and joined in a post-mortem reunion, beheld in red and bile. Like loving something too much and wanting to fuse with it, only to end up corrupting it. I see floating down from the darkness giant bald humanoids clad in black without any body hair. They open their mouths to an impossible degree and sing in one continuous note like chanting monks, blessing the bowl of offering in this festival celebrating death. I put down the black screen. Angelic figures greet me and inform me that my time is up. I enter a new room and see a futuristic stove being presented to me like a see-through crematorium. Holy books, Bible, Tripitaka, Quran, Vedas, Torah, Book of Mormon, a dozen others, plus my journal, chronicling my philosophy and life's work, are laid out like a bed, and I lay on top of them. The fires rise, and I am taken along with those burnt relics, while the angelic beings quietly observe and then leave when the ashes are burnt to nothingness. Quote, the reward of suffering is experience. Aeschylus. An insane crone marches from family member to family member with a hammer and bashes them in the head, especially the youngest children, while screaming, "It's a beautiful world," endlessly beating them until they are long past dead and their faces are beyond recognition. Good evening. I'd love to cut your fucking head off. Mouths stabbed into crisscrossed patterns, all according to the plan to unmake you. The motto of cults and governments, Destroy what you love. Destroy yourself. Become anew. Be reborn through pain and violence. Become no longer human. But you're still not a god. Mushroom clouds and cotton candy, laughing soldiers gone insane from castration drugs, and underage third-world whore houses, pregnancies aborted by .50 caliber rounds. In the red skies are the latest flying machines, firing rounds into the densest packets of resistance. The still insane soldiers come in afterwards, having never fired a single round. Soon they join the homeless back home, and are forced to choke on the one-a-day hunger pill as their jobs are outsourced to automation and highly decorated mercenaries. The scars of breast implants is my fetish. The morgue is full tonight. The air has a Lysol aroma, a bad movie being watched by no one plays in the background. A malnourished body lies in the middle of the morgue, nude and open, decapitated. The gender appears to be a young boy with a gaping wound in their lower abdomen. The wound continues to expand. Inside we see an idyllic valley. Nude prepubescents frolic and play in the tall grass and maypoles. An environ created by an AI gifting us an artificial paradise, utilizing Henry Darger aesthetics. Both genders would, at first, appear to be represented, but all have penises, include the most effeminate among them. It would be more accurate to presume the frolicking humans as transsexual. One of them spots something, a signal down the river of golden urine. Along the riverside floats dead fish. The children kneel on that riverbed and thank Allah for their food. In the name of their God, they commit to orgies in a giant mass of sex. They assemble into a pyramid so that one may ride to the top of the pile. A leader is crowned when just as quickly their hair is torn away and spat on their face. The shorn scalp is applied to their chin as a mock beard. The leader smiles in ecstasy as their torture continues for hours. When the sun is raised to its peak is when the pyramid of sex catches fire and takes all with it. His object of obsession held in a mechanic vice, their limbs twisted until broken, but his obsession lives on. He realizes he may have gone too far. Quote, "In an insane world, a sane man must appear insane." Alien 3 Assembly. Cut. The hot glow of the fuck machine causes the sex juices to create steam in the air. It stays for far longer than an icy breath. The gaped cunt twitches uncontrollably, and its owner gasps for air for several hours. She, a voluptuous fuck doll in white robes with nipples impossibly erect, thanks her brother for delivering to her such sensations. For in that orgasm she saw the way. She saw the beginnings and ends of untold universes, the fall of every civilization, the details of every birth and murder of all living things. And in that endorphin high she saw the way to a genetic self-baptism, a reworking of an older self and becoming reborn. Her brother, a minotaur, consoles her by licking the sides of her face with his sandpaper tongue. He paws her still dripping cunt as though it were the Holy Grail. In her sweet cum, he savors this knowledge she shares with him, closing his eyes in pleasure as he experiences the fall of man. They speak to each other in bad Shakespearean verse, pretentious and esoteric, formulating new fuck discoveries. They proclaim in unison, "Then we shall create a meaning." She cups his massive balls and engorges herself on his horse cock, his fuck shooting in streams between her face and down between her small breasts. His prick still hard, she drifts away to another room, with her face still coated. Now you see how beautiful the darkness is. Her brother coos at her with a wink, as she presses a button unlocking a cage above them. A nude old woman and prepubescent girl spill onto the floor. They live in fear before the duo. They do not beg, but scream and moan in dissatisfaction, as they were never taught a language. The brother takes the old woman and fucks her to death. The sister takes the girl, and at first caresses her in tender embrace, but soon bites off her nipples and clitoris, culminating in a fisting that pulls the virgin cunt inside out. The lovers spoon and whisper to each other in embrace, "Forever? Forever?" as confirmation of their union, where they make a plan to find a meaning in the madness that they freely participate in. Soon, the duo have prepared and set to complete their great work. The monitoring instruments have shown little progress since first discovering the planetoid, seemingly built or salvaged from ever more ancient wreckage. The astronaut continues noting his observations, leaving his hypothesis in the footnotes. In that moment, the planetoid begins to stir. Its temperatures rise, its shape warping from a planet to what appears to be a miniature black hole with fangs. He runs to another console where he can control the magnification of the microscope more precisely. The planetoid begins to split in half and interconnects with new parts in ways never before imagined, and becomes a gateway. The instruments and life support systems go haywire as the planetoid unleashes waves of a force not yet understood. The logs of fuckery upon that planet gave no indication as to what would happen. A white burst of light emanates and takes with it all around it, including our astronaut. Their logs are preserved in a black box, not a physical one, but a mix of coded signals with instruction that emanate in that hot flash of instant light. There was nothing left as a space traveler in a glass coffin witnesses the birth of a blood-soaked universe presided by incestual gods. Quote, "The world is like a ride in an amusement park, and when you choose to go on it, you think it's real because that's how powerful our minds are. The ride goes up and down, around and around. It has thrills and chills, and it's very brightly colored, and it's very loud, and it's fun for a while. Many people have been on the ride a long time, and they begin to wonder, hey, is this real, or is this just a ride? And other people have remembered, and they come back to us and say, hey, don't worry, don't be afraid, ever, because this is just a ride." And we kill those people. Shut him up. I've got a lot invested in this ride. Shut him up. Look at my furrows of worry. Look at my big bank account and my family. This has to be real. It's just a ride. Bill Hicks. What is it about? I don't know. But I know how it ends.